Chapter 5130. He couldn't accept it. He really couldn't accept it. Amidst the crackling electricity, King Duoluo glared furiously at the departing figures of Qiao Mu and company. He strenuously stretched out a hand and called out feebly through the cage. "No, come back! No, come back, come back, come back!" Bang! Opening the secret door of the dungeon, a ray of light, like a flash in the pan, flickered at the water cage's entrance. Then it once again returned to darkness. King Duoluo was completely flustered. He unwillingly shouted at Xiaoyi. You go call them back. We will have a good talk, a good talk." He really didn't expect that these two people would have this kind of attitude. They didn't give him the slightest compromise and didn't listen to him at all. King Doro was completely at his wits' end. He couldn't do anything to these two youngsters, who were like newborn calves that weren't afraid of tigers. Who knew that this husband and wife pair would have such a deceptive character? Others hadn't even finished speaking when the two impatiently left with the little monk in their arms. Couldn't they have a good talk? So why did they come here today? Did they just want to arrogantly tell him that Kong Kong would become the adopted grandson of the great emperor in a short while? Or did they want to say that in the future, Kong Kong would no longer have anything to do with him, King Doro, and the entire King Doro estate? King Doro's outer garment that was stuck to the cage was already completely soaked in sweat. This made the soreness even more intense. The electric current passed through his skin and went straight into his heart and lungs. That kind of heart-drilling and lung-piercing sizzling feeling really made his entire body feel extremely painful and numb. Only now did he know how vicious the methods of this couple, the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, were. However, Xiaoyi unexpectedly said with a smile, "Just now, there was a child here. The masters didn't want this subordinate to be too strict with you. After all, it was bloody. The child might have nightmares at night." King Doro's face was stuck to the cage. If there was a mirror in front of him right now, he would naturally see clusters of small snake-like electric currents moving back and forth on his face. The skin all over his body had long been charred by the electric current. Because his spiritual energy was sealed, he simply couldn't circulate his energy to resist the power of the 5 spirits contained in the cage. Therefore, one could imagine the pain he was feeling right now. What do you want? What do you want to do?" King Duoluo was now somewhat terrified. He thought that he had to find a chance to talk to Kong Yin. He had to find a way to survive. However, he did not expect that Kong Yin would be so tasteless as to directly seek out the couple. Now that things had turned out this way, it seemed that there was no way to salvage the situation. "You don't forget, I am the Crown Prince's uncle. You can't do this to me. That's impossible." Heh. Xiaoyi could not help but sneer. He raised his hand to press his face against the cage. "Is that so? If you don't want to cause trouble for His Highness, I can let you stay for a few more days." Xiaoyi waved the porcelain bottle in his hand in front of King Doro and said with a smile, "Look, this is a gift from the Crown Princess Darren. What if you took it yourself? Let me help you." King Duoluo's complexion abruptly changed. He couldn't help but tremble. "You dare to lynch this old man? His Majesty hasn't even said that he's going to execute me. How dare you? How dare you? Whether I dare or not, isn't it only after I do it that we'll know?" Xiaoyi said with a chuckle as he waved the porcelain bottle in front of him. Chapter 5131. In this subordinate's opinion, King Duoluo is at death's door. Yet he's no longer as brave as he was in the past. He's also a coward. How about this? Let this subordinate fulfill my filial piety for the prince. Scram! Scram, scram, scram! King Duoluo forcefully waved his hands, but his entire body was pressed against the iron cage. The range of movement his hands could move was no more than half a meter. Moreover, his spiritual power was currently sealed, making him akin to a cripple. Even if he extended his hand to slap Xiaoyi, the other party would only treat it as scratching an itch. King Duoluo's slap had no effect whatsoever on Xiaoyi. You let go of this old man. We need to discuss this. How about this? You go and ask the Crown Prince and Crown Princess to come back. Tisk. Xiaoyi smiled and shook his head. I didn't expect the prince to actually admit defeat. I originally thought that with the prince's fearless temperament, he wouldn't admit defeat even at death's door. It's really only when things come to a head that one can truly see a person clearly. At this moment, King Duoluo didn't bother arguing with Xiao Yi. What he wanted to do the most right now was to fight for his life. Fight for his life, he must fight for it. At this very moment, King Duoluo was already extremely regretful. In his opinion, if he had known earlier that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess were actually such stubborn people, then he naturally wouldn't have dared to provoke these two lords. The most hateful of all should be that old baldy Kong Yin. It was he who had to invite this couple over. Now that he was riding a tiger, he had no way to back down. He simply didn't know what to do next. Prince, can you go on your way with peace of mind? Xiao Yi asked with a chuckle. King Duoluo's entire body trembled, and he said in an almost pleading tone, Can't you give this old man, another chance? How about this? Before he could finish speaking, he saw Xiao Ye's expression turn cold, and he unceremoniously grabbed his face with one hand, forcing him to open his mouth. A porcelain bottle of medicinal powder was poured in just like that, without mercy, causing old King Duoluo to cough incessantly. You. Although King Duoluo didn't know what powder Xiao Yi had forced him to take, he was very clear in his heart that it definitely wasn't anything good. He was extremely flustered, and the hair on his head was standing on end because of the electric shock. Emolien, Xiaomu, he bellowed hoarsely, his tone laced with intense hatred. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he realized that he had completely lost his voice. His eyes were lifeless, and he sat down in a daze. With a splash, he sat down in the water. From his neck down, his entire body was soaked in the smelly water, but he didn't feel it at all. He just stared blankly at Xiao Yi. Ha. Not long after, Xiao Yi heard a few gasps coming from King Duoluo's throat. The gasps were sometimes fast and sometimes slow, sometimes short and sometimes long, but his face looked extremely normal. There was nothing abnormal about him at all. However, Xiao Yi knew that King Duoluo might have already lost his mind. Looking at how he was staring blankly at him, sitting in the cold water in a daze, he knew that this King Duoluo would probably stop here for the rest of his life. Everyone who stayed by the young Crown Prince Consort's side was well aware of her methods. Anyone who provoked her definitely wouldn't have a good ending. What's more, this King Duoluo just had to court death by extending his hand to the little monk Kong Kong. With the little Crown Princess' protective nature, she definitely wouldn't let him go, even if this King Duoluo hadn't done anything yet. Chapter 5135. Yes. That secret guard nodded vigorously, with an affirmative expression. Then this powder is my son's? It's not, Your Majesty. The secret guard said expressionlessly. According to this subordinate's investigation, this powder was personally ground by the Crown Princess. The Emperor nodded somewhat dazedly, then suddenly inhaled. But my son didn't add fuel to the fire? This didn't seem like him at all. His Highness the Crown Prince secretly ordered that subordinate named Xiao Yi to cripple all of King Duoluo's spiritual power and cultivation after feeding him the powder, turning him into a complete cripple. Only then did the Emperor nod with a pleased expression. That's more like my son. My son is such a vicious person. He looks so harmless on the surface, but he's done so many ruthless things. Seeing the Emperor's current expression, the secret guard couldn't help but twitch his mouth. It seemed like the Crown Prince's methods were vicious, and he was especially fond of the Emperor. His Highness the Crown Prince seemed to have even said that this King Duoluo was guilty of the most heinous crimes. If it weren't for the fact that the Emperor wanted to keep him alive, he would have been sent on his way long ago. The Emperor nodded with a gratified expression. That's what my son would do. The secret guard especially wanted to complain. Can you not praise your son so shamelessly? This doesn't seem to be a good thing. The Emperor praised a few times with a face full of approval, then turned to ask the secret guard. Why haven't you left after reporting? The secret guard was truly speechless. He lowered his head and rolled his eyes. Your Majesty, then this subordinate will take his leave. All right. The Emperor waved his hand and suddenly stopped him. Hey, wait. Right, that Zhu Fei, where is he now? The secret guard bowed and said, I've arranged for him to be in a courtyard in the south of the city. Your Majesty, do you want to see this person? If this Zhu Fei hadn't surrendered to the Emperor and contributed the firearms distribution map of East and West 12th Street, perhaps this Dragon Flame City would have been in a state of panic for a while. A trace of coldness flitted through the Emperor's eyes. No need. At this moment there wasn't the slightest bit of warmth in his eyes, only indifference and coldness. Go, take care of this person in secret, don't leave any traces. The secret guard nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He accepted the order and immediately left. How could he spare someone like Zhu Fei? In front of benefits, he could repay kindness with enmity and treat King Duoluo. No one knew if this person would completely betray them in the future. Such a despicable person who forgets righteousness at the sight of profit naturally couldn't be left alive. Arbor was in seclusion in the domain of stars for a long time. When he finished concocting the soul-returning Bodhi pill, he opened his eyes. The pill in his hand was covered in golden light. It shone dazzlingly and eagerly wanted to fly out. Only after sticking a sealing talisman on the pill did Qiao Mu manage to stabilize it in her palm. Xiao Qiao closed her eyes and entered a state of advancement once again. It was unknown whether it was due to her previous accumulation or not. Yi Chun and the others followed the scent of the medicine. They saw the little fellow sitting in front of the fine sky jade dragon with her eyes closed. As she breathed in and out, endless divine power was absorbed into her body from all directions. Each time Jojo advanced, there was a feeling of broadening people's horizons. It was the same at this moment. Arbor absorbed divine power for more than half a month on the main planet, before it was enough to support her this time's leveling up. By the time she opened her eyes, more than a month had passed on the main planet. The little stoic's eyes were bright, and her fair face had a bit of rosy color. She appeared to be full of vigor. Yi Chun couldn't help but tsk lightly. You leveled up again. Chapter 5136. Watching Jojo advance was like watching her drink water. It was so fast that it made people want to sigh uncontrollably. Everyone said that it wasn't easy for female cultivators to cultivate. It would be even more troublesome, especially if they were unlucky enough to encounter the 5 spirits reincarnation or advance during pregnancy. A single mishap, and they might be struck to death by heavenly law. This time, Jojo successfully advanced from 7th level Divine Practitioner to 8th level Divine Practitioner. She skipped over the minor realms of initial success, phenomenal success, and peak. The problem was that she seemed to have advanced not long ago. Besides, it was already good enough that other people's cultivation didn't regress during pregnancy. Many people found it difficult to advance even half a step. Yet she, as expected, Jojo was different from the rest. Arbor glanced at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who wanted to say something, but was hesitating. She waved her hand and said, Speak. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's mouth twitched. He didn't know if it was his imagination, but he felt like the little stoic's queenly aura was becoming stronger and stronger. She waved her small hand, and a queenly aura that exuded dignity without being angry assaulted him. Jojo, is it strenuous to advance? It's not strenuous at all. Arbor looked at him in confusion. She raised her hand and looked left and right. She abruptly sent out a palm strike, forming a divine power vortex in the air. Soon, this power was pulled back by her again, and the divine power dispersed around her body and vanished into nothingness. Even Ma Shurchen couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at this kind of willful control over divine power. Jojo, I feel like there's absolutely no one else in the world who has this kind of control over divine power. Ma Shurchen wasn't stingy with her praise. Arbor was overjoyed and nodded her small head. Not bad. Holy Sun Mayan, who had rushed over to watch the show after hearing the news, said indifferently, since she's pregnant, then she should recuperate properly. In other words, she didn't need to be in a hurry to advance during this critical period. The little stoic, who was used to rebuking people, said expressionlessly, I've been recuperating all this time. I just feel like my cultivation keeps rising in my sleep, and I'm about to advance when the conditions are right. Mayan, why did he inexplicably not want to talk to this stoic? He couldn't even speak 3 sentences with the stoic before she shut him up. Follow the will of the heavens, Arbor added. I have to go out and meet the heavenly axiom. I wonder if it will give me a 5 spirits experience this time. I don't think so, Holy Sun Mayan said expressionlessly. During the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation, it was not willing to strike you, let alone now. Yuan Shurchen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I think what the Holy Sun said makes a lot of sense. Jojo, why don't we just leave? Arbor shook his head. Facing is a matter of attitude. It doesn't matter if it comes or not, I can't avoid it. I have to face it head on. Let it come. He Chun and Holy Sun Mi Yin twitched their lips at the same time. The 2 people speechlessly looked at the little stoic. The little girl's face was full of fighting spirit, as she rushed out of the star field in a hurry. I think she is going to be disappointed, Holy Sun Mi Yin said expressionlessly. I think so too. A moment later Wei Zichin's personal maidservant, Xiaoyan, hastily ran to the forecourt to find Emo Lian. Ignoring that Prince Emo was talking to second Uncle Qiao, she walked up and bowed before saying, Madam wants His Highness the Crown Prince to quickly go to the inner courtyard to take a look. Eldest Miss seems to have come out of seclusion, but her expression is a bit off. What's off? Emo Lian's heart skipped a beat. She keeps shouting at the sky, come, come. Chapter 5137. Wei Ziqin was extremely anxious. Ever since her daughter went into closed-door cultivation 3 days ago, she had been feeling uneasy and unable to let go. Now her daughter had finally come out of closed-door cultivation. But from the start, she had been pointing at the sky and the earth, shouting something at the cloudless blue sky. She came over from the other end of the long corridor and discovered this situation. It was only when she got closer that she heard her daughter shouting, Come, come, come. Come for what? Wei Ziqin walked over with a dumbfounded expression and hurriedly sent her capable maidservant to the front yard to invite His Highness the Crown Prince over. She wasn't proficient in cultivation and didn't know what was going on with her daughter, but she felt that something was amiss. She had to invite His Highness the Crown Prince over for her to be at ease. Wei Ziqin walked over and cautiously called out, Jojo. At first, Arbor didn't hear, but after Wei Ziqin called out a few more times, Arbor turned her head, her little face rosy. She looked at her mother and grinned. Mother. Wei Ziqin saw that her daughter was fine and relaxed. Jojo, what are you doing? Arbor had been shouting for so long and was already tired. She took the handkerchief from Kai Chi and wiped the sweat on her forehead. She waved her hand nonchalantly. It's nothing, Mother. If you don't want to come, then forget it. Let's go to the living room. This heavenly Tao didn't come when it was supposed to. But when it wasn't supposed to, it was always blindly prattling. She had had enough. Arbor hugged her mother's arm and pursed her little lips. Mother, daughter's cultivation level increased slightly. I thought the heavenly Tao would test me, but I didn't expect nothing at all. Wei Ziqin nodded and looked up at the cloudless sky. It doesn't look like it's going to rain immediately. Jojo, you can cultivate, but don't push yourself too hard. You have to remember that you're pregnant with the imperial grandson. Arbor looked at her mother blankly. I didn't push myself. I was just sleeping, and my cultivation level inexplicably increased, and then I'm about to advance. The group of maidservants behind her couldn't help but roll their eyes when they heard this. The little crown princess was blatantly showing off. He was showing off, right? No one could cultivate so easily and freely. What did he mean by his cultivation inexplicably increased just by sleeping? Was this a joke? Wei Ziqin could not help but look at her daughter speechlessly. In the end, she could only say dryly, It's good that it's not hard. When the crown prince heard that his wife had come out of seclusion and rushed over, he couldn't help but cover his face. His wife was coming in the backyard. It was really shocking. He hoped that his mother-in-law was not frightened. Emo Lian had just stepped into the backyard when she heard a loud bang. A bolt of purple-red lightning in the sky suddenly smashed into the ground not far away from his feet. He was so scared that he instinctively retracted his legs and took a big step back. The little stoic was about to help her mother into the hall when she suddenly heard a clap of thunder coming from behind them. She quickly turned around. Wei Ziqin also jumped in fright and quickly turned her head to take a look. She saw His Highness the Crown Prince's innocent and pitiful expression as he stared at the mother and daughter pair with his beautiful phoenix eyes. Arbor couldn't help but want to laugh. He looked up at the sky, then at hubby, and exasperatedly shook his head. It's sick. This heavenly law was truly an unreliable fellow. She had waited for it for the better part of a day, but it didn't strike a single bolt of lightning. Now that it saw hubby, it suddenly pointed the spearhead at him. Was it trying to infuriate her? So it wanted to take hubby down a notch. Chapter 5138. Was it really alright to take it so unreliable? Xiao Mu hastily walked up to her pitiful husband and patted him placatingly. Don't be scared. It's just a paper tiger. It doesn't dare to really attack you. So it's just going to smash next to your feet to scare you. Wifey, why does it attack me when you provoke it? Arbor pondered for 3 seconds before saying seriously, it's probably because it doesn't dare to provoke me. His Highness the Crown Prince. My wifey is so arrogant, what should I do? Jojo, then you have to protect me well. Arbor nodded vigorously and patted his chest with a serious expression. The next time it dares to scare you, we'll go up to the sky and blast a hole in it. Wei Zichin's mouth twitched as she looked up at the sky. It was still the same clear sky that seemed to have been washed clean by clear water. There was not the slightest shadow of thunder and lightning. She hurried forward and said to her daughter and son-in-law, it should be fine now, right? Was Xiaomo affected by the lightning? Actually, how could anything happen to the Crown Prince? He was just used to acting pitiful in front of his wifey, and hiding behind her to act coquettishly, seeing the lingering fear on his mother-in-law's face. The Crown Prince hurried forward with a smile. Mother, it's fine. I was just caught off guard, and was startled by the sound of the lightning. It didn't hit me anywhere, don't worry. Wei Zichin saw that the Crown Prince was dressed in white and had black hair. His entire body was untainted, and he really didn't look like he was roasted by the lightning. Only then did she relax and nod with a smile. The three of them chatted and laughed as they walked into the living room. Wei Zichin suddenly remembered something and turned to her daughter. Jojo, you said you were going into seclusion for 3 days to refine pills. That pill? Arbor was silent for a few seconds before nodding. It's already a success. Then did Peak Master Morong. Arbor shook his head. No, I haven't given it to her yet. Wei Zichin held her daughter's hand with a comforting expression. Jojo, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Right, Mom is right. Emo Lien hastily interjected from the side. Xiao, just do your best in everything. Wei Zichin nodded with certainty. That's right. Arbor pursed her lips at the two of them. She understood the logic, but it was difficult to put it into practice. Her heart was filled with hope. However, he was also afraid that this ray of light would eventually be drowned by the darkness. Don't worry. Emo Lien held her hand and gave her some encouragement. I believe in Jojo. Your alchemy skills are the best in the world. If even the pill you concocted doesn't work, then Morong Sun truly had no hope. I have so much confidence in you, so how can you not have this confidence yourself? Looking at her husband's relaxed tone, Arbor reluctantly nodded at him and took a deep breath. Don't fear failure, and move forward courageously. I'll feed Master the pill in a bit. Okay. Wei Zichin felt comforted when she saw that her daughter's mentality seemed to have relaxed. You were in seclusion for more than 2 days, which means you spent about a month in the star domain to advance this time. Mother, this isn't considered long, Emo Lien said to her mother-in-law. The further you go, the longer it takes to advance, until you enter the transcendent realm and enter seclusion to cultivate and advance. 1 or 2 years might not even be considered long. Thankfully, time flows 12 times faster in the star domain. Chapter 5139. 1 or 2 years, which is equivalent to 1 or 2 months in the outside world. Wei Zichin sighed with emotion, and there was a trace of rejoicing. For a cultivator, this was considered an extremely short period of time. Her daughter's star domain was truly a natural treasure, saving them a lot of time on the path of cultivation. The three of them entered the hall and sat down. Wei Zichin suddenly thought of something and said, a few days ago, the Countess of Huainan came to visit and sent me an invitation card. The Count of Huainan's estate holds the Butterfly Night Banquet every year, and that day coincides with her 50th birthday. Therefore, they plan to hold the banquet at noon together, with the butterfly night banquet in the evening. Wei Ziqin held Arbor's hand and said, "The Countess of Huainan specially came to visit, and Mother was too embarrassed to reject her, so she planned to go there." Arbor nodded. It was naturally good for Mother to make more friends, and Arbor would not object to her attending such banquets. Although to her, banquets were never good, and all banquets were too boring. But she was her, and Mother was Mother. If Mother wanted to attend, then she should attend. As long as she took precautions to ensure Mother's safety, it would be fine. "Your sister hasn't come out of seclusion yet," Wei Ziqin sighed. Otherwise, this little naughty monkey would definitely not miss such a lively event. Arbor's brows moved slightly, and she said expressionlessly, "Then I'll go with Mother." After saying that, she almost bit her tongue and regretted it a little. Lord Jojo hated to attend boring banquets the most. If not for her mother's melancholy tone, and the fact that she was alone with no one to accompany her, she would not have volunteered. Wei Ziqin could not help but want to laugh. How could she not see her daughter's vexed expression? She patted her daughter's hand and said with a smile, "Jojo, you don't have to force yourself." Arbor pursed her lips and muttered in a low voice, "It's not particularly forced." Wei Ziqin couldn't help laughing out loud. After dinner, Arbor pulled Emolien into the star area, heading straight to the mountain behind Paradise Star. They stood in front of the ice coffin on the slope of Paradise Star for a long time, until Emolien gently pulled her wrist. Only then did Xiaomu raise her hand. A pill with a hint of golden light slowly flew out from her palm and floated in the air, moving up and down slightly. Because it was suppressed by a sealing talisman, this sacred medicine was very obedient. Arbor took a deep breath and looked back at Emolien. The latter nodded slightly at her, raised his hand, and gently lifted the lid of the crystal coffin and moved it to the side. Xiaomu looked at Morong Sun's unchanging face and took a deep breath before taking a few steps forward. She stuffed the pill into Morong Sun's mouth, her movements slightly trembling. Although her heart was surging like a tidal wave, she pretended to be completely unconcerned on the surface. This pill rapidly melted the moment it entered her mouth. Without any movement, this sacred medicine would naturally take effect in the human body. Arbor and Emolien both squatted in front of the crystal coffin and waited for a while. Emolien reached out to feel Morong Sun's breathing, a hint of joy flitting through her eyes. "I think she's breathing." Arbor also hastily tried, and her heart thumped heavily. It wasn't an illusion, and it wasn't as if it was. There really was a faint breath. The little stoic's hands were tightly clasped together. She gently bit her lips and impatiently stared at the silent woman inside the crystal coffin. Chapter 5140. Would Master suddenly open her eyes? If Master opened her eyes, she would be able to see Jojo immediately. At that time, Jojo would definitely punch her and curse her for being a damn liar. Arbor suddenly shook his head. No, I can't hit Master. Even if Master wakes up, her body should be very weak. I can't hit her. Then I can only curse her. Yes, I'll curse her to death. No. I can't curse her to death. I saved her with great difficulty, so I can't let anything happen to her. Just as Xiao Mu's imagination was running wild, Morong Sun quietly laid in the coffin the entire time, quietly exhaling in a barely discernible manner. She did not open her eyes and look at Xiao with a smile as Xiao Mu expected. Hence, she did not give Arbor a chance to properly curse her. Emolien worriedly turned to Arbor. "Jojo." "Yes." Arbor was not as dispirited and miserable as Emolien imagined. Instead, she turned to look at him with sparkling eyes and comforted him first. "It's fine, I know. Master has passed away for many years. Even if she used the soul-returning Bodhi pill to recover her vital signs, I'm afraid it will take some time for her to completely wake up. She will recover." Sir Jojo tightly clenched his fists. "I have confidence that I can cure her." This was already a good start. She believed that Master would slowly recover her consciousness. Once she regained her consciousness, her recovery time would accelerate and shorten, because Master was not someone who habitually admitted defeat. She believed that even if there was only a sliver of hope, Master would definitely do her utmost to recover herself. Emolian relaxed and grasped Morong Sun's hand. It's great that you can think it through. Even if Peak Master Morong wakes up in the future, it will probably take some time for her to recover her original cultivation. After all, she was sealed in ice for so many years after the Great Battle, so she probably lost all her cultivation already. Arbor clenched his fists. As long as she can regain her consciousness and slowly wake up, it's only a matter of time before her body recovers. Don't be hasty, she warned herself. Don't be hasty. Although waiting made people anxious, waiting was also a kind of hope in disguise. Everything was fine as long as there was hope. If she couldn't fix it the first time, then she would fix it the second time. If she couldn't fix it the second time, then she would fix it the third time and fourth time. There would be a day when Morong Sun would return to her original state. Just like in Shijio City, he followed behind her and called her his disciple at this moment. She still remembered that she had entered through the window and waved at her with a smile. Disciple, call me master? It will be fine, Arbor told himself. Everything will be fine soon. She had to believe in herself, and she had to believe in her master even more. She had said that she would protect him for the rest of his life. How could she go back on her words? A few days later, a continuous rain swept across the land of Dragon Flame City. Arbor regretted it so much. But who told her to agree to her mother's request in the spur of the moment? She had dug a hole for herself, so she had to jump into it even if she had to cry. Asking her to go out in this kind of weather was practically no different from forcing her to go to the execution ground. She hated rainy days the most. Her shoes would get wet the moment she stepped on them. Wei Ziqin sat in the carriage and stared at her daughter's gloomy stoic face. She wanted to laugh a little. Mother already said that it's fine if you don't come out with us on rainy days. It's fine if Mother attends alone. You have to do what you promised, the little stoic said sulkily. Wei Ziqin almost laughed out loud. Happy New Year, my friends. Everyone, continue to charge forward together. Do your best to protect yourself and resist the virus. Chapter 5141. Her daughter's stoic face could store any emotion. After interacting with her for a long time, one would know that under this stoic expression, there were all kinds of emotions. Happy, depressed, irritated, angry. Sometimes it was just a subtle change. Those who were close to her, such as Crown Prince Lian and Wei Ziqin, could see some clues from her small face. Sir Jojo sat upright and still, holding a jar of plums in his hands and popping them into his mouth. I haven't seen Kong Kong in a few days. Since we're going to Count Huainan's estate today, why don't we pick up Kong Kong? Wei Ziqin suggested. Okay. This little imp was a bit annoying, but she was inexplicably unused to not having him nagging beside her. Speaking of Kong Kong, Wei Ziqin couldn't help but sigh. I really didn't expect the little monk Kong Kong to be related to little Mo by blood. Then what's his proper name? The little stoic couldn't help but be taken aback. She really didn't know Kong Kong's proper name. She heard her mother ramble on and asked curiously, Mo Kong Kong? Arbor's mouth twitched, and she suddenly said whimsically, how about I give the little monk a name? As the little monk's foster mother, wasn't it too natural for her to give her son a name? No need, no need. Wei Ziqin repeatedly waved her hand, feeling that she couldn't let her daughter cheat this little grandson of hers. I think we should just call him Mo Kong. It's simple and catchy, Wei Ziqin hastily said. It's easy to write. The little monk was literate and had outstanding literary talent. Wasn't her mother overly worried that the little monk wouldn't know how to write if she changed his name? Arbor pursed her lips and nodded reluctantly. That's fine too. Wei Ziqin chatted with her daughter the entire way, and the carriage soon arrived at the small path in front of Count Huainan's estate. Count Huainan's estate was located in a secluded area in the western part of the city. In front of the door was a small stone path that could only allow one carriage to pass through. The road was a little bumpy, and the whole journey would take about 15 minutes. Those who could receive an invitation from the Duke of Huainan's mansion were mostly the reputable madams and young ladies in Dragon Flame City. There were madams and daughters of officials, as well as young ladies and madams of aristocratic families. Wei Ziqin's carriage was considered to have arrived rather late. When he turned to the gravel road in front of him, the road ahead was already blocked. He could vaguely hear the sound of quarreling coming from the wind. Arbor lifted a corner of the curtain, glanced outside, and immediately threw the curtain down. It was misty outside the window, and she could see the wet raindrops at a glance. Immediately, the little crown princess lost her interest in looking. Wei Ziqin knew her daughter's temperament very well, so she couldn't help but laugh. She also went forward to lift the curtain and looked through the rain for a while. There seems to be a collision between two carriages in front. Soon, the coachman who went to inquire about the news hurriedly came to the window in a straw raincoat and reported, "Madam, Crown Princess, a carriage in front has turned over, and now it's blocking the road." Wei Ziqin couldn't help but frown. This small stone path was the only way to Count Huainan's mansion. It would be troublesome if it was blocked. Oh my God! What should we do? Just as they were talking, a madam's exclamation came from a carriage behind them. The coachman reported to Wei Ziqin. Looking at the situation, the road behind us is also blocked by an endless stream of carriages. There's no way to turn around. Madam, please wait in the carriage for a while. I'll go ahead to inquire about the news. Thank you for your hard work. Chapter 5142. Don't say that, madam. This old servant is doing his duty. The coachman, wearing a straw raincoat, hurriedly left to scout ahead. Wei Ziqin turned around to glance at Xiao Mu before placating her kindly. Xiao Xiao, the Count of Huainan's estate should be sending people out to help maintain order. Let's first settle down and wait. Arbor made an "oh" sound, his face expressionless, but Wei Ziqin knew that his daughter was a bit impatient. I heard that Count Huainan's madam is bedridden all year round. Arbor suddenly said, Then this banquet is? Could it be a concubine of Count Huainan's estate? It's madam who personally organized it. Wei Ziqin hurriedly said, How could such a big banquet be organized by a concubine of the family? It would be rude to outsiders. But it's true that madam's health is not good. Wei Ziqin nodded. I heard that Count Huainan seems to favor a second concubine of the family? It's said that the family's finances are all controlled by this concubine? Wei Ziqin wanted to laugh when she heard this. She glanced at her daughter and nodded. Daughter, mother didn't expect that you would have the temperament of a nosy person. Her daughter expressionlessly looked at her mother and said indifferently, Not at all. It wasn't that she was keen on being a nosy person, but that the little maidservants beside her chattered and casually told her. She basically knew about all the happenings in the family. One family was robbed today, and another family was married tomorrow. Wei Ziqin laughed and took her daughter's hand and patted it twice. Second concubine's surname is Bao, and she also has a daughter. They are indeed very favored in Count Huainan's estate. At this point, Wei Ziqin couldn't help but sigh. Which family didn't have their own problems behind closed doors? Wasn't there a lack of cases of favoring the concubine and neglecting the wife? The more noble the family, the more wives and concubines, the more likely it was that a bowl of water would not be peaceful. Arbor said, Oh. The mother and daughter were chatting when they suddenly heard two soft knocks coming from outside the carriage. Wei Ziqin lifted the curtain to take a look and saw that it was a person who looked like a steward. He was currently bowing towards their carriage. Are the crown princess and the madam of the Qiao family in the carriage? This is the wife of Minister Fong of the Ministry of Justice. I have specially come to pay my respects to the crown princess and Madam Qiao. Wei Ziqin looked over from the carriage and saw a middle-aged lady pulling a dignified and elegant young lady out of the carriage together. Braving the rain, they came over to greet them. Wei Ziqin hurriedly said, Madam Fong, don't be so courteous. It's raining outside. Don't let Madam and Miss catch a cold. Steward, quickly help them into the carriage. Now that the road ahead is blocked, we don't know how long it will take for them to pass through. That middle-aged lady smiled and bowed in the direction of Wei Ziqin and Arbor. Thank you, Crown Princess and Madam Qiao, for your understanding. There's no need to be so courteous. Wei Ziqin was a bit embarrassed. Seeing that the madams and young ladies in the nearby carriages were about to get out of their carriages to greet them, she hurriedly exhorted loudly, Everyone, there's no need to be so impatient. It's raining heavily halfway through the journey, so don't be in a hurry to get out of the carriage. It won't be too late to meet again when we reach Count Huainan's residence." The madams and young ladies all thanked the crown princess and Madame Qiao before settling down. Wei Ziqing giggled and patted her expressionless daughter with a smile, softly muttering, "Looks like they were all scared by you." Arbor snorted. "When did I scare them?" She didn't sleep well yesterday and was muddle-headed the entire day. Tomorrow before 12 a.m., she would make up for 2 more chapters. Chapter 5143. As long as these people didn't provoke her, they could get along well with each other, couldn't they? She wasn't a bipolar patient. Why would she cause trouble wherever she went? In fact, most of the time, she wasn't the one who made trouble. However, if others made trouble in front of her, she wouldn't be afraid of trouble. Wei Ziqing patted her daughter's little hand with a smile. She knew her daughter very well. In fact, she was the easiest person to get along with. As long as you didn't provoke her casually, she wouldn't take the initiative to talk to you for 100 years. She had been passive since she was a child, and wasn't good at making friends with others first. And once she was annoyed, she would fight back fiercely. In recent years, his youngest daughter, Lin had also developed a temperament of, if someone offends me, I'll definitely kill them. Perhaps because she was influenced by what she saw Madame. The coachman came back in the rain and whispered to Wei Ziqing through the window. "I heard it. It's the concubine's daughter of Assistant Minister Zhang of the Ministry of Justice. Her carriage collided with Infanta Tao's. Now the second concubine of Duke Huainan's mansion is dealing with this matter with some maids, and it may take some time. Madame and the crown princess can stay in the carriage at ease. When the road ahead is clear, we can enter the mansion." Arbor frowned slightly. How did they collide? It seems that Infanta Tao's carriage wanted to move forward and accidentally collided with Assistant Minister Zhang's daughter's carriage. Commandery Princess Tao's carriage turned over, and Commandery Princess Tao was frightened. Infanta Tao. Arbor looked puzzled. There are 3 Infanta Tao in the royal family. Everyone knows Infanta Wushuang. As for the other 2, one is Infanta Xingping, the daughter of Princess Hongyao. She married to Tsangzhou 5 years ago. The other one is Infanta Fu, the youngest granddaughter of Great Elder Princess. She is 9 years old this year. She has been in poor health since she was a child, and never attends banquets. Nobody knows her. There were very few princesses and infanta in the royal family of Mo, who were infeft with territories. Who was this Infanta Tao? The coachman was surprised and said, "I heard second concubine call her Princess Tao." "Oh yes, that's the princess of King Zheng's mansion." With that said, Arbor remembered. "So it's her. Daughter, who is she?" Wei Ziqing asked curiously. "He's sick in the head," Arbor said sarcastically. King Zheng Zemo Shikong's brain wasn't very good either. In any case, his entire family wasn't like normal people. Hearing her daughter's words, Wei Ziqing knew that her daughter didn't like Princess Tao. This Princess Tao, she's not a princess. Arbor curled his lips. She's Zemo Shikong's sister. Seeing his mother's confused look, Arbor gave his mother a rare explanation. Mo Shikong is His Majesty's adopted son. His father and younger sister's family returned to Zheng King's mansion after he became successful. With that said, Wei Ziqing understood instantly. She nodded and said, "So that's how it is. Then this Infanta Tao." "Oh, that's what some people call themselves." Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes. She didn't expect that Su Shi Tao, who had been reprimanded by the crown prince for her improper conduct, still dared to use Zheng King's mansion's name and call herself a princess. Arbor shook her head speechlessly. "I've never seen such a shameless woman." Chapter 5144. It was said that women were thin-skinned, and all had a sense of shame. However, in Arbor's opinion, this Su Shitao didn't have the slightest sense of shame. All day long, her vanity caused her mischief, and she acted in a haughty manner. She was clearly nothing, but she had to put on airs everywhere she went. She didn't know whether to say that she was ignorant, or that the Prince of Zheng was utterly ignorant. Arbor shook her head, and chatted with her mother in the carriage. The coachman suddenly trotted over and said, "Crown Princess, madam, the road ahead is clear. We can go now." Wei Ziqing nodded and pulled her daughter to sit properly. Soon the carriage began to move forward, but the speed wasn't very fast. After about 7 minutes, they finally arrived at the main entrance of Count Huainan's estate. Before Wei Ziqin and Arbor alighted from the carriage, they saw a black-robed old mama quickly walk over with an umbrella in one hand. She hurriedly curtsied and went up to greet them. Madam is slightly unwell, and specially instructed this old servant to wait here for Madam Qiao and the crown princess. Then she turned and nodded to the coachman. I'll have to trouble you to drive the carriage directly into the front courtyard. Please follow me. Arbor sat down again. Just as the mother and daughter's carriage was about to drive in with the old mama, they heard an extremely sharp and untimely scolding sound. Why can their carriage drive in but ours can't? Could it be that our commandery princess is inferior to others? The black-robed old mama stood in front of that troublesome servant girl and shouted angrily, Who are you? That servant girl was very unreasonable. At this time, she didn't even hold the umbrella and stood in the rain with her hands on her hips. She shouted at the old mama, Are your dog eyes blind? You don't even recognize our commandery princess Tao. What, you unruly old servant, are you thinking of rebelling? The black-robed old mama was so angry that her face turned red. She had seen the invitation card and guest list sent by Madam. She really had never heard of this commandery princess Tao. She really couldn't be blamed for being ignorant and inexperienced. At this moment, Su Shitao was sitting in a carriage with the curtains rolled up. A servant was crouching beside the carriage, waiting for this young lady to alight. Su Shitao looked coldly at the old nanny in green clothes. His expression was gloomy and uncertain. Then he retracted the leg he had stretched out. At this moment, he was still sitting in the carriage motionless. One had to earn one's reputation. As the eldest miss of King Zheng's residence, which part of her was inferior to others? Why could other people's carriages drive directly into the Duke of Huainan's mansion? But she had to get off the carriage at the public passage and walk into the mansion with an umbrella like those madams and young misses. Although they had only walked for a few minutes, the symbol of their status was immediately different. All the carriages that could drive into the Duke of Huainan's mansion, which one of them wasn't a madam of an official, or a miss of an aristocratic family. What did Su Shitao owe him? She was also the eldest young miss of King Zheng's residence, all right? At this moment, a middle-aged woman, Su Nyang, who was wearing a peacock green long dress and a golden cloth in her hair, walked up swaggeringly. She covered her mouth and smiled at the old nanny in green clothes. So it's Nanny Lu, Madam's personal servant. It's really wrong of you to do this. This is Commandery Princess Tao of King Zheng's residence. You can't be so rude to others. Why aren't you kneeling to greet Commandery Princess Tao? The old nanny in green clothes was stunned. Just as she was about to reply, she heard the young crown princess sneer through the curtains. Commandery Princess Tao is so imposing. Chapter 5145. When this voice entered Su Shitao's ears, her entire body stiffened for no reason. It's her? That damn crown princess. This voice was unforgettable for her entire life. For a while, it even caused her to have nightmares again and again. After all, she didn't know how many times she had suffered in this person's hands. Now that she thought about it, her teeth itched with hatred. Kai Xiao and Kai Qi rolled up the carriage's curtain, revealing Wei Ziqin and her daughter sitting in the middle. Su Shitao glanced at them and couldn't help but avert her gaze. This person was dressed in a moon-white robe with a silver-red cloak, simple but not lacking in luxurious aura. The accessories in her hair were also very simple. There was only a phoenix hairpin with pearls in it, and 2 tasseled beads hanging from her temples, but it added a touch of glamour to her spirit. A person as cold as ice didn't need much decoration at all, because her movements were beautiful. She was like a noble lady from an aristocratic family who walked out of a landscape painting, but also like a person who was raised in the depths of the palace, burning incense and playing the zither all day long. In just one face-to-face encounter, Su Shitao felt that she was fiercely defeated. In front of this person, she was like the difference between a sparrow and a phoenix. Although she didn't want to admit it, she was very clear in her subconscious that it was the difference between cloud and mud. Su Shitao clenched her teeth and fiercely said to herself in her heart, "Illusion. Everything is an illusion." She couldn't be more clear about the nature of this crown princess. What demure lady who walked out of an ink painting? What gentle noble lady who stayed in the depths of the palace? It was all an illusion. The person in front of her was someone who could easily cripple Su Shihua, Su Shitao's older brother. She was someone who could use power to intimidate her eldest brother, Mo Shikong. This woman wasn't as gentle, elegant, and dignified as she was now. She was an evil spirit, an Azura, a person who would never reason with you. Su Shitao took a deep breath. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a palace maid beside the crown princess shout at her with a stern face. "Bold woman! How dare you sit in the carriage and speak to the crown princess like this?" With a meaningful glance from Kai Chi, two black-clothed bodyguards immediately came out from behind the carriage and rushed to Su Shitao's side. Su Shitao didn't see what the two of them did, but he cried out in alarm. He felt his body become light as someone kicked him off the carriage. "Miss!" A servant girl with a plump figure and a thick braid cried out in alarm and rushed forward to help her up. However, before he could run far, he felt as if something had hit his foot. A numbing sensation came over him, and his legs went soft. He fell to the ground, half lying in the pond. Su Shitao was in a miserable state. After being kicked off the carriage by the black-clothed bodyguard, he immediately knelt down in the puddle, his knees hurting. Now her pretty face was burning up, and she felt a burning pain on her face. She felt the gazes of the surrounding madams and young misses all land on her. Some were snickering with ill intentions, while others were pitying her. All of these gazes were like steel needles piercing her body. "Ah!" Su Shitao's scream had just escaped her mouth when she suddenly felt pain in her throat. She couldn't make a sound for no reason. She knew that this was bad. This must be the dirty tricks of that little crown princess. That person was really vicious. It was just a few words of dispute between girls, and she actually poisoned her to make her lose her voice. Arbor glanced at Su Shitao indifferently. Chapter 5146. Seeing Su Qianxi's sorry figure drenched from head to toe in the rain, she immediately lost interest in continuing to chat with her. Such a brainless thing was not qualified to be Jojo's opponent. She had no interest in teaching this person a lesson. Ordering Saishio to lower the curtain, the young crown princess waved her hand for the carriage driver to leave with the blue-robed nanny. The old nanny surnamed Lu had witnessed this scene from beginning to end. She already had some understanding of the young crown princess's temperament. She knew that although this crown princess looked young, she was definitely not someone to be trifled with. She did not dare to be negligent, and led the young crown princess's carriage into the Count of Huainan's fu. Madame Count of Huainan personally welcomed the two in the main hall, and introduced a tall young woman to Wei Ziqin with a smile. "Lu Ying, come and greet the crown princess and Madame Qiao." Lu Ying, the eldest legitimate daughter of Count of Huainan's fu, stepped forward and politely bowed to Arbor and Wei Ziqin. She said with a smile, "The crown princess and Madame Qiao's presence at mother's birthday banquet brings light to our entire count's fu." Wei Ziqin said with a smile, "No need to be so courteous." On the other side, the second madam of the count's fu, Madame Bao, hurriedly directed a few servant girls to help the dirty Su Shitao up. The second madam frowned and endured the strange smell coming from Su Shitao's body. She smiled brightly. "Miss Su, why don't you come into the fu with me to change clothes first? Your figure is similar to my daughter's. If you don't mind, you should be able to wear clothes." Su Shitao originally wanted to refuse and say that she disliked wearing other people's second-hand clothes and wanted to return home. But after thinking about how she had been tricked into such a sorry state, her desire for revenge couldn't help but stir. She gnashed her teeth in hatred, but she couldn't open her mouth to speak. Madame Bao was a little confused. She glanced at Su Shitao and asked tentatively, "Does Miss Su have other plans?" In fact, Madame Bao wanted Su Shitao to return to Prince Zheng's mansion as soon as possible. Wouldn't it be awkward if everyone stayed behind to face each other? Unexpectedly, Su Shitao agreed and followed her into the count's residence to change his clothes. Madame Bao thought that she had finally learned her lesson after being taught a lesson. However, she never expected that Su Shitao had stayed behind with the intention of taking revenge on that crown princess. Su Shitao didn't say anything on the surface, But he was actually filled with hatred in his heart. Before that barbaric crown princess came, second concubine had been so respectful to her that she didn't need anyone to teach her how to address her as Princess Tao. But now, although she hated those who changed sides, the most hateful person was still the crown princess who didn't give her any face. In the eyes of this crown princess, was her Prince Zheng's residence really that unbearable? It was as if there was no need to care about him at all. Filled with resentment, Princess Tao was dragged away by Madame Bao to change her clothes. Wei Ziqin and Madame Count Huainan chatted for a while before walking out hand in hand. Madame Count Huainan said as she spoke, "I'll introduce you to a few friends." The two of them walked out on their own and left the young crown prince consort behind. Arbor looked at his mother's back in a daze. He pursed his lips and turned his head to see Fong Luiying looking at him with a smile. "I heard that the crown princess is a heaven-grade alchemist. Could you give Luiying some pointers? Tomorrow, I'll make up for 2 more chapters." Chapter 5147. Arbor was a bit curious. "You're also an alchemist?" The other party smiled bashfully at her and nodded before shaking her head. She said, "I am just that. I'm not that skilled at refining pills. I can only succeed once or twice out of 10 times." Arbor blinked and comforted her gently, not understanding the situation. "Then newly refined pills will indeed be like this. You can refine them a few more times in the future, and it'll be fine once you're proficient." Yet Fong Luiying smiled embarrassedly. I refine common pills like blood-clotting pills and body-strengthening pills every day. I've probably refined them more than 100 times already. Presumably, it's because I'm limited by my aptitude that my success rate is so low." Arbor. The little stoic was momentarily at a loss for words. Why did normal people often fail when refining pills? At most, the majority of people would fail multiple times when refining new pills at the beginning. After they became proficient in the future, the only difference would be the success rate. The better ones had a higher success rate and could refine 2 or 3 pills. The worse ones could at least refine 1 pill at a time, right? She had never heard of any alchemist who would fail 8 or 9 times out of 10 after refining common pills several hundred times. How unlucky and lacking in aptitude would one have to be able to do this? When Arbor thought of this, she couldn't help but look sympathetically at Miss Fong Luiying. This girl's appearance was upright and virtuous, and she didn't look like a clown. Fong Luiying was very perceptive. When she saw Chiong Amu looking at her, she hastily explained, "I've made a fool of myself in front of the crown princess. Luiying doesn't have any aptitude for refining pills since she was young, and I've previously invited several pill masters to teach me. They also said that Luiying doesn't have any aptitude, but if it doesn't hinder the crown princess, I would be very grateful if the crown princess could give Luiying some pointers." Arbor thought that she had nothing to do now, so she nodded at her. "All right then. First find a place and refine a pill for me to see." Hence the little crown princess was so angry that she almost kicked Fong Luiying twice. When this guy said that he didn't have any talent in alchemy, he was just being humble. It wasn't that she didn't have any talent in alchemy. It was that she didn't even have the slightest bit of basic medicinal knowledge. It was fine if she couldn't recognize all the medicinal herbs, but she couldn't even grasp the amount of medicinal herbs needed for the hemostasis pill. Therefore, not to mention failing 8 or 9 times out of 10, it was already giving her face if he didn't fail 10 times out of 10. The 1 or 2 chances of success were probably due to the luck of the god of creation. "You've thrown things out so carelessly. Has your furnace never exploded before?" "I did." Young Miss Fong gave the little crown princess a look of affirmation and nodded very seriously. "Because the furnace is going to explode every 2 to 3 days. My small medicine room has been moved to the most remote part of the court." The little stoic, she had almost nothing left to say. "Actually, have you ever thought that, instead of going through so much trouble, why don't you hire 2 pill refiners by your side?" The little crown princess tried to reason with this one-track-minded Miss Fong. "How can that do? I don't trust a single one of those pill refiners. I have to refine a body-strengthening pill for my mother, so that I can nurse her body back to health step by step in the future." "You are doing this for your mother?" The little stoic asked hesitantly. "MHM." Young Miss Fong nodded heavily and turned to look at the little crown princess. Chapter 5148. Crown Princess, did I grasp the pill refinement method incorrectly? The little stoic also didn't know how to explain it to her. If she told the truth, she was afraid it would dampen her enthusiasm. But if she told a lie, it didn't suit her personality. Hence, she simply changed the topic and said, "If you start learning basic pharmacology, you should be able to improve more. You can go to a pill shop to take a look and buy some basic pharmacology books. You can start by self-studying step by step." Fong Luing listened earnestly and nodded repeatedly, as if she had taken the little stoic's words to heart. "Your mother took the body-strengthening pill, but it's not very useful now. When I first saw your mother, I thought her complexion was slightly sallow, perhaps due to spleen deficiency or eczema. But when I saw her again today, I discovered that her glabella is yellow with a tinge of black. This is a sign of being poisoned." "What?" Fong Luing lowered her voice and exclaimed. "Crown Princess, you're saying my mother is poisoned?" The little Crown Princess nodded with certainty. "She is poisoned and it's quite severe. It should be the kind of poison that has accumulated in her body over a long period of time and hasn't completely erupted yet. That's why she only looks weak." Fong Luing was both alarmed and furious, and her body actually tottered. She didn't expect that it wasn't that her mother's body wasn't well, but that someone had ulterior motives and poisoned her over a long period of time? "But my mother has been receiving treatment for a long period of time. Why didn't the physician say that?" Fong Luing trailed off when she reached this point. She wasn't truly stupid and naturally understood that if the physician was intentionally concealing it, then it meant that the physician was colluding with the person who poisoned her. "I have a bottle of self-made all-purpose antidote pills. Give one to your mother every 3 days, and you'll see results after 3 times. If the results aren't good, I'll give it to your mother at that time." Arbor added, "But normally, as long as it's not a poison pill refined from sacred rank herbs, it's basically detoxifying." Fong Luing thanked him profusely and reached out to take it. She was just short of kneeling down and kowtowing to the little Crown Princess. Arbor waved his hand for her to stand up. "Do you still want to learn pill refinement?" "Yes." Fong Luing nodded. "Even if I'm not talented, I still want to read more medical books. Although I'm stupid, I'll learn for 2 or 3 years if other people learn for a year. There will be a day when I should also have some small achievements." Arbor pursed his lips. He took a piece of paper and wrote down a series of book titles for her. "Follow this list and go to the pill house to buy books. Read them one by one. Even if you memorize them by rote, you'll still be able to memorize them. When the time comes, you can sort out all the questions you don't understand and ask me one by one." Fong Luing beamed with joy as she took the book list and nodded repeatedly. "Thank you, Crown Princess. Thank you, Crown Princess. Is young Miss here?" A gentle voice came from outside the courtyard. Fong Luing hurriedly kept the book list in her inner world. She turned to Arbor and said in a low voice, "From the sound of it, it seems to be second sister's servant. Crown Princess, please wait for a moment. I'll go out and take a look." Arbor grunted and waved his hand nonchalantly. He casually picked up the pill furnace that Fong Luing had placed on the table and touched it up and down. Although Fong Luing didn't know how to refine pills, this furnace was still a spirit tool. Fong Luing couldn't help but smile. "This pill furnace is quite a coincidence. I accidentally found it in the market. I didn't expect it to be such a good spirit tool." Chapter 5149. As expected, your dog's hit luck is pretty good, Arbor thought inwardly. She then heard that servant girl's voice urgently ring out again. "Eldest miss, this servant is coming in now." Creak. Fong Luing pulled open the double doors with all her might with a sullen face and strode out. She blocked the doorway and coldly glanced at that maidservant who was sticking her head out to look around. "What are you looking at? What are you doing in my pill refinement room when you don't have any rules?" The maidservant hung her head and inwardly pursed her lips in disdain. She thought, "If it weren't for my family's miss telling me to coax you over, who do you think would be willing to come to your crappy pill refinement room that's riddled with dangers. This damned place would explode at the slightest provocation. All the servants in the estate had always kept a respectful distance from this damned place. They had always stayed as far away as possible from this damned place. Did you think she liked coming here? If it weren't for the maidservant's eyes swiveled, and she walked up to greet Fong Luing with a grin. She said with a smile, "Eldest Miss, this servant came under orders to invite Eldest Miss and the Crown Princess to Willow Garden together. The banquet hasn't started yet. My family's miss has invited many patrician families' young misses to Willow Garden to admire the koi." Fong Luing looked disinterested and waved her hand. "No need, I still have several pills to refine." That maidservant couldn't resist rolling her eyes and suppressing her bellyful of disdain. She carefully smiled and said flatteringly, "Then you can refine pills at any time. My family's miss said that it's rare for so many older and younger sisters to gather together. Hopefully, eldest miss won't neglect these guests. Besides, if you don't go, then the Crown Princess might want to go take a look." "Not going." The young Crown Prince Consort's crisp words immediately made that last swallow back all the words she had yet to say. This Crown Princess was truly unreasonable. She had already spoken to this extent, but she actually flatly refused. This really was not giving her family's miss any face. If the little stoic knew this maidservant's unspoken criticism, she would definitely sneer and retort, "Face? How much weight is your family's second miss worth? She still wants me to give her face, huh?" Servant Xiao Mian greets the Crown Princess. That servant girl nimbly scuttled forward. Separated by the door, eldest Miss Fong Luing hurriedly bowed to Arbor. "Crown Princess, our Willow Courtyard's pond has recently had quite a few precious species of koi fish." The second young miss was thinking. At this moment, the rain had stopped and the sky had brightened up. "I'll accompany the ladies to the Willow Garden, if the Crown Princess can honor me." "Is there something wrong with your ears? This consort already said that this consort won't honor you." This consort's words once again made the servant girl swallow her words. Fong Luing was speechless. If it weren't for the fact that the little Crown Princess was in the room behind her, Miss Fong would have burst out laughing. He didn't expect the Crown Princess to be such a person. Her frankness and straightforwardness were simply adorable. The girl called Xiao Mian felt her face heat up. The Crown Princess's merciless words were simply a slap to her family's miss's face. She really didn't give her miss any face at all. Xiao Mian was here to invite someone. Asking the Crown Princess to go was secondary. But Miss said that she must invite eldest Mississippi. If she couldn't invite eldest Miss over now, she wouldn't be able to escape a beating either. That would be miserable. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel a bit flustered. Chapter 5150. The maidservant cried out pitifully, "Crown Princess, eldest Miss, our Miss came to invite you with good intentions." The young misses of the various families are also waiting at the pavilion for the Crown Princess and eldest Miss to go. If the two of you don't go, then wouldn't you be letting down the many young misses' good intentions? As she spoke, she started to cry, feeling very wronged. Arbor walked out of the door, and his cold gaze landed on the maidservant. The corners of his lips curled up coldly. "Are you sure? Are you sure which aristocratic young misses are really willing to see this Crown Princess go?" Her purpose for coming today was actually to accompany her mother to visit her friends. If no one provoked her, perhaps after the lunch banquet, she would accompany her mother back. But if someone didn't have eyes and wanted to provoke her, then don't blame her for being merciless. Fong Luing couldn't help but frown. She thought of the young Crown Princess's words and associated it with the chronic poison in her mother's body. Now that she looked at this scheming and cunning maidservant by her second sister's side, the more she looked at her, the more she disliked her. Could her mother's chronic poison be related to Second Aunt and her daughter? All these years, Second Aunt had controlled the manor's finances and had long been itching to kick her mother out and take the position of the mistress of the household. It was just that her status was still a little low and couldn't suppress her mother. But if her mother's body gradually weakened, or even died, Fong Luing couldn't help but shudder. When she came back to her senses, her gaze towards the maidservant Xiao Mian instantly became extremely cold. For a moment, Xiao Mian thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her, and couldn't help but look up again. Coincidentally, she met Lu Ying's cold and lonely eyes, which were sharp and sharp. Xiao Mian couldn't help but jump in fright. Although this eldest miss wasn't someone who would be bullied and humiliated by others, because she was often addicted to alchemy, and didn't know much about alchemy, she always looked a little silly. But seeing her today, it seemed that eldest Mrs. aura was much stronger? Could it be because Xiao Mian sneakily glanced towards Arbor, and she was secretly alarmed? Could it be because the crown princess was supporting her? Things were not looking good for them. If the crown princess supported the eldest miss and her daughter, then their second miss would have a hard time in the future. What? You're going to invite the crown princess to come to the willow garden to admire the fish? A surprised cry broke the laughter of the young ladies. Plop. Miss Gao of the right prime minister's family, in her nervousness, dropped half a bag of fish food into the water. The fish spread out in the water, like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. Many koi fishes crowded around, and continued to fight for the food. Fang Mingyue, who had a slight smile on her face, turned to look at the girl who had cried out in alarm. Miss Li, what are you doing? Miss Li coughed a little awkwardly. No, nothing. I just find it strange. That's true. Hee hee. She laughed dryly, and looked at Fang Mingyue with a complicated gaze. Miss Fang didn't seem to have come to the last few gatherings in the palace. Fang Mingyue's expression stiffened slightly. The noble lady beside Miss Li hurriedly bumped into her. Miss Li instantly realized and laughed awkwardly again. Right. That was to invite the first wife's daughter. It would have been better if she didn't explain. Once she did, Fang Mingyue's face darkened even more. The noble lady beside Miss Li couldn't help but roll her eyes. Chapter 51-51. What does Miss Li mean? Fang Mingyue maintained a stiff smile, and secretly gritted her teeth. Did these legitimate daughters come together to slap her in the face? This Miss Li was only the legitimate daughter of the Honglu Temple's deputy minister, a lowly official. How dare she look down on a girl from the Duke of Huainan's mansion? Fang Mingyue was not a broad-minded person, and she had already exploded from Miss Li's words. The noble lady beside Miss Li hurriedly tugged at her foolish best friend, and said to Fang Mingyue with an apologetic smile. Miss Li is outspoken and didn't mean to ridicule second Mississippi Miss Fang. Please don't think too much. Fang Mingyue said with a fake smile. So it's the legitimate daughter of Censor Jiang. I've always heard that Miss Jiang and Miss Li are good friends. You two are really close and inseparable. Miss Jiang smiled gently and didn't say anything. Miss Li was also tugged by her, so she didn't say anything. Fang Mingyue made a mental note of them, and turned to look at the girl leaning on the edge of the pond. Your Highness, what do you think of our pond? Not bad. Princess Tao raised her head proudly, and pointed at a koi fish not far away. Our mansion also has that kind of golden koi, and this and that. We have all of these. Overall, the koi fish in your pond are 10% or 20% of the size of those in my mansion. Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Princess Tao's EQ was really low. It was enough that she praised Prince Zheng's mansion in different ways, but she didn't need to say that the koi fish in their pond were less than 10% or 20% of those in Prince Zheng's mansion. Fang Mingyue's face darkened, and she couldn't help but call Su Shitao an idiot in her heart. If it weren't for Prince Zheng's mansion, she, as the daughter of the Duke of Huainan's mansion, wouldn't have to lower her voice and listen to her nonsense. Princess Tao's words immediately caused an awkward silence. Everyone silently stared at the koi fish in the pond, occasionally sprinkling some fish food, and fell into a state of silent observation. At this moment, a koi fish happened to jump out of the water. The girls laughed and pointed at the koi fish that jumped out of the water, laughing and shouting, Look, don't tell me this koi fish has become a spirit? It's so lively and active." Everyone slightly pushed each other. A few ladies originally wanted to squeeze to the railing to take a closer look, but in the end, they accidentally squeezed Su Shitao. Su Shitao's bent calf hit the railing with a dong. It was so painful that her face scrunched up and she screamed, Who hit this princess? She was really unlucky. Previously, when he was kicked off the carriage by the crown princess's 2 bodyguards, his knees were heavily smashed into a puddle and were already bruised. Now that he was being squeezed and bumped by someone, he was afraid that he would bleed. She turned her head angrily and saw a familiar-looking woman. She took a few steps back. "You bitch again. Are you trying to make things difficult for me today?" Princess Tao flew into a rage and glared at the woman who took a few steps back. "No, it's not me, it's not." This was the concubine's daughter from Assistant Minister Zhang's family, who collided with Princess Tao's carriage and caused it to flip over. Previously in the carriage incident, Miss Zhang had already experienced Princess Tao's fierceness and terrifying fierceness. Unexpectedly, the two of them bumped into each other again. Chapter 51-52. But it wasn't her. It was the two ladies beside her, who quickly stepped back after bumping into Princess Tao. Therefore, Miss Zhang, who was standing behind, happened to face Princess Tao's angry accusation. "You bitch, kneel down!" Su Shitao shouted angrily, pointing at Miss Zhang in front of her. Miss Zhang couldn't help but tremble. She hurriedly looked at the ladies around her for help. But now, no one dared to block Princess Tao's anger for her. They hurriedly stepped back. Miss Li originally wanted to go forward and say a few words, but she was hurriedly stopped by Miss Jiang, who was beside her. "The legitimate miss of the Zhang family won't sit by and do nothing," Miss Jiang whispered in her best friend's ear. "Let's wait for a while." As expected, the moment Princess Tao finished shouting, a faint voice came from behind the crowd. "Who is Miss Su asking to kneel down?" Everyone's heart skipped a beat. A delicate and pretty woman in her early 20s slowly walked up and pushed her younger sister back. She glanced indifferently at the furious Su Shitao and said, "Don't think that you are a real princess just because others call you Princess Tao." All the ladies present couldn't help but gasp. They all looked at Miss Zhang, who was so blunt. The legitimate miss of Assistant Minister Zhang's family was really fearless. She didn't care about causing trouble for her family when she talked back to Princess Tao. As expected, Su Shitao was so angry that her hair stood on end. She pointed at Zhang Yuyan, trembled and screamed, You say that again." Zhang Yuyan said with a sneer. "As everyone knows, there are only 3 princesses in the divine land. Princess Wushuang is famous in the world. I don't need to say more. Princess Fu Fu is the granddaughter of Great Elder Princess. She's only 9 years old. The other one is a princess. 5 years ago, she married Songzhou for the sake of righteousness. She hasn't returned yet." "What? There are so many people here. But no one knows that there is another princess in the divine land." Miss Li chuckled. Miss Jiang hurriedly pulled her silly best friend. Today they had completely offended Princess Tao. A young lady with no rank calls herself a princess. "Ha! I usually just take it as a compliment from my sisters. Don't tell me that you've really taken it to heart. Do you really think that you're a princess, berating the daughters of officials and making them kneel to you? If my Shu sister were to kneel down today, which of the young ladies present would have any face left? The daughter of an official in our divine land has to kneel down and apologize to a commoner lady with no rank. Isn't this the biggest joke in the world?" "Well said." Fong Luiying clapped her hands vigorously and walked over with large strides. Just now, she had heard the noise by the pond from afar. When she rushed over, she found that it was Princess Tao of Prince Zheng's mansion, who was throwing a tantrum again. Princess Tao was really a troublemaker. She was nothing, but she thought too highly of herself. When the noble ladies saw the young crown princess and Fong Luiying walking over together, they were scared out of their wits. They hurriedly lined up to greet the crown princess, who was not to be trifled with. No one dared to neglect the young crown princess. Compared with the arrogant and domineering Princess Tao, she was the one who was not to be trifled with. Chapter 51-53. As the young crown prince consort walked over, all the noble ladies and young misses she saw lined up to greet her. Every one of them was well behaved, without the slightest overstep. Their expressions were also more respectful than usual. Almost all of them had their heads lowered, looking like quails. The young crown princess raised her small hand and waved, expressionlessly saying, "No need to be so polite." The ladies repeatedly thanked her, then stood up in a well-behaved manner, retreated to the 2 sides and stood still. Dozens of ladies stood at the edge of the pond, Absolutely silent Fang Mingyue was extremely angry, staring at this elder sister who appeared with great momentum, and said with ridicule, "Elder sister really has a great aura. Now the way you act is more and more like the first madam's arrogance." Fang Luing sneered. "Younger sister, are you blind? In front of the crown princess, you dare to be so rude. Didn't you see that the other young ladies of the other families have already come forward to greet? Younger sister really doesn't know the rules. Quickly come forward to greet? Younger sister, you have to give face to the Count family." Fang Mingyue secretly clenched her teeth, smiled apologetically, and bent her knees to greet. This little girl Fang Mingyue greets the crown princess. She slightly bent her knees and stood up straight, looking at Arbor with a smile. Fang Mingyue thought, the greeting is just for show. Thinking about it, I am the grandniece of old concubine Fang. The crown princess shouldn't not give me a little face. Kaixio. Unexpectedly, the young crown princess walked past Fang Mingyue with a cold face. Her small face didn't fake any expression, showing no intention of giving face to Fang Mingyue. Fang Mingyue's fake smile suddenly froze on her face, and she couldn't help but mutter in her heart. This crown princess was too snobbish, facing her elder sister and facing her. It was two completely different faces. Could it be that she was looking down on her, a concubine's daughter? The young crown prince consort had a stoic and expressionless little face from beginning to end. For some reason, it became two different faces in Fang Mingyue's eyes. On the other side, Kaixio nodded after receiving the order. She stepped forward and kicked the back of Fang Mingyue's knee. Fang Mingyue, who was not paying attention for a moment, screamed and fell forward, kneeling down heavily. "Crown princess, did the crown princess allow you to rise?" Kaixio coldly said with a cold voice. "Don't you know the rules? Kneel properly." Kaixio angrily shouted, scaring Fang Mingyue to the point that her heart slightly trembled. Arbor walked to the edge of the pond and asked someone to bring him a stool to sit on. Only then did he calmly look at Su Shitao, who was glaring at him. The little stoic raised her small hand and pointed at Su Shitao standing to the side. Just as Kai Chi was about to step forward, Su Shitao clenched his teeth and curtsied. "Greetings, Crown Princess." The little Crown Princess frowned. "Why are you still here? Why is there a shit stirrer like you everywhere I go?" Su Shitao was already in such a sorry state at the entrance just now. But he actually followed her into the Count of Huainan's estate instead of returning home. She was loathsome just looking at him. Even his expression was distorted as he glared at this darling with hatred. Just looking at him was an eyesore. "You aren't deliberately staying here to plot against this crown princess, right?" Su Shitao almost bit his own tongue. This damn woman was truly sharp, causing him to be at a loss for words. "This crown princess advises you to behave yourself." Arbor snorted. "If you want to play tricks with me, I'll accompany you to the end. I just don't know if you can afford to play." Chapter 51-54. Su Shitao's knees were a little sore from bending, but the little crown princess did not ask her to get up. As a result, the man could only stand there with his back half bent and his face half frozen. The anger in his heart was so strong that it was rushing to his head. However, Arbor was even angrier when he saw Su Shitao. The commotion just now was all because of this woman. Arbor now felt very annoyed whenever he saw Su Shitao, and just wanted her to shut up. Su Shitao squatted until her legs went numb. She didn't even hear Arbor telling her to get up. A rush of blood rushed to her brain. The grievance in his heart was unstoppable. Who dared to give her attitude when she was in King Zheng's residence? All the servants in the mansion called her Princess Tao and flattered her. How could he be despised to this extent after casually entering the Duke of Huainan's mansion? Not only was he treated differently from the others when he entered, but he was also beaten up by the crown princess subordinates at the entrance. Now that the damned crown princess had seen her, she was picking on her again. She had already bowed to her in such a humble manner. What else did she want? Did she want to ascend to the heavens? The furious Su Shitao's mind went blank for a moment. He was so angry that he immediately straightened his body and roared. "Are you deliberately targeting me? Audacious!" Kaixio was also infuriated by this woman. These days, There were not many people who dared to be so impudent in front of the little crown princess. Many of the noble ladies took a few steps back in unison, and all of them huddled together on both sides of the road. Their eyes were filled with an inexplicable trace of fear. Crown Princess, I still have some matters to attend to in the residence. I will take my leave first. Crown Prince Consort. This subject is also with past experience. No one dared to stay here and wait for the little crown princess to make a scene. Because at this moment, everyone was very clear that they didn't want to live too long just to watch the show. This fire could burn them at any moment. Not everyone's drama could be watched blindly. At the very least, they didn't dare to look at the crown princess in front of them. Perhaps he would have to suffer together with that brainless Miss Sue. The young crown prince consort gave an expressionless grunt of acknowledgement, but the noble ladies hurriedly retreated as though they had been pardoned. Just as they were about to leave one by one, they heard Feng Mingyue's exasperated roar from behind them. What are you doing? Are you that afraid of the crown princess? Could it be that the ladies present don't even dare to say a word of justice? The noble ladies looked at each other in dismay and cried out in unison. Oh please, Miss Feng is not afraid of death. If you want to help Princess Tao deal with the little crown princess, you can do it yourselves. Don't involve us, okay? It's obviously the crown princess who is bullying others. Even so, you don't dare to say a word of justice? At this moment, Feng Mingyue was so angry that she stood up straight. She stomped her feet and said angrily, I don't know how Mingyue offended the crown princess to make you dislike Mingyue so much that you want to punish us by making us kneel. Arbor lifted her small chin slightly. Kai Xiao and Kai Chi both understood, and hurriedly stepped forward. Without saying anything, one of them kicked Feng Mingyue's back, and the other kicked Su Shitao's back. Their movements were exactly the same. As for Feng Mingyue and Su Shitao, their movements of being kicked to the ground were exactly the same. Chapter 51-55. With two thuds, the two girls miserably fell to the ground. They were so angry that they couldn't help but want to curse. Crown Princess, so long-winded. The young Crown Princess shouted. Behind Saishio, two tall and burly old mamas immediately followed behind her. They raised their hands and slapped Feng Mingyue and Su Shitao on their faces. You dare to be so impudent in front of the Crown Princess. The Crown Princess ordered you to kneel, and you dare to make faces? Young Miss Su, second young Miss Feng. This old servant can only make an exception today to teach you the rules of seniority. Arbor expressionlessly watched the two old nannies give the two young misses a few slaps. Hearing the two's wretched screams, she couldn't help but frown. Stuff their mouths. Kai Chi waved her hand and shouted. Feng Mingyue was so angry that her insides burned, and she completely lost her sense of propriety. In this residence, she was pampered by her parents every day, and doted on in every way. Who in the residence dared to be so bold and rude to her? This crown princess was abominable, abominable to the extreme. Feng Mingyue screamed, and pushed away the two old nannies beside her. She jumped high, her hair disheveled as she screamed. I'll fight it out with you. Everyone was startled. Young Miss Jiang couldn't help but exclaim. Second young Miss Feng, you can't. However, Feng Mingyue had long been blinded by anger. She raised her fist and rushed towards the young crown princess. Two hidden guards instantly blocked the young crown princess. Two pairs of cold eyes stared coldly at the person rushing over, as if they were looking at a corpse. Arbor only waved his hand indifferently, and stood up from the chair, rolling up his small sleeves while he was at it. Move aside. You men don't need to interfere in the matters between women. The two hidden guards. When Madame Lu of the Duke of Huainan's estate heard the servant, who hurriedly came to report that the second young miss had offended her superior and violently punched the pregnant crown princess, she almost fainted on the spot. Her entire body went limp on Wei Ziqin. Wei Ziqin was even more anxious. She stood up and shouted angrily, Where is he? The servant was startled and quickly shouted, It sits at the koi pond in the willow garden. The madam of the Duke of Huainan's mansion was so angry that she almost fainted. She hurriedly stood up with the help of someone. When she was about to step out of the front hall, she almost bumped into a woman who rushed into the door. That woman was decked out in gold and silver. And when she saw the sickly madam in front of her, she immediately cried out, "Madam, you have to uphold justice for second young miss. What do I have to do? What can I do for her? Your daughter is so audacious that she even dares to lay her hands on the crown princess, who is pregnant with a dragon fetus. I think she and you don't want to live anymore." Second Young couldn't help but wail loudly. She held Madam's hand and refused to let go. "Madam, we don't know what exactly happened in this matter. How can you be so sure that it was second miss who made a move on the crown princess first? We'll know whether it's true or not when we go take a look." First Madam brusquely flung her hand away and said with a stern expression, "Moreover, so what if the crown princess made a move first? Can your daughter retaliate when the crown princess made a move? Let me tell you, don't say that the crown princess is pregnant with a dragon fetus right now and can't take the slightest fright. Even if she didn't. She hit your daughter. You have to endure it for me. You even rebelled and wanted to retaliate. You've lost your mind. I've always said that you have to teach your daughter well." Chapter 51-56. And the result? You didn't listen. Now you've caused such a disaster for my family. Let me ask you, can you bear the responsibility? Second concubine sobbed and cried, "First Madam, you can't leave my Mingyue alone." Old concubine Feng watched Mingyue grow up. If anything happens to her, we can't explain it to old concubine and old concubine. Explain it. I think you'd better explain it to His Majesty and the Empress first. If anything happens to the little imperial grandson, our entire family, your daughter, your mother, your 7 aunts, 8 aunts, 3 uncles, 6 aunts, and even that dog on the street, none of them will be able to escape. Young Madame Bao immediately slumped to the ground, unable to raise her head after being scolded by First Madam. She wanted to reach out and hug First Madam's leg, but she was kicked hard and rolled to the door. The old servant behind First Madam was also very fierce. She stepped on young Madam's foot and crushed the back of young Madam's hand before leaving with First Madam. Young Madame Bao twitched in pain and shook the back of her hand several times. She turned to the maidservant behind her with tears in her eyes. The maidservant also cried, "Second Madam, we have to hurry over. Otherwise, second miss will be at a disadvantage." Young Madame Bao gritted her teeth and quickly stood up from the ground with the help of the maidservant's hand. Go quickly. Sanchi, let Sanchi go to the front yard to invite old master. Right now, only her husband could save her precious daughter. Her Mingyue. Why did she provoke that fiend crown prince consort for no reason? First Madam and Wei Ziqin hurried to Willow Courtyard and almost fainted again as soon as they walked in. If it weren't for the 2 old servants supporting First Madam's body, First Madam would have already lost her balance. "Madam, don't worry. Take a closer look. The crown princess seems to be fine." Wei Ziqin was also very anxious, but when she saw her daughter in the distance, her heart calmed down. Her daughter had never been bullied since she was young, so it was unlikely that she would be beaten up by the second miss of the Fong family. Therefore, the servant who sent the message must have misunderstood something. First Madam calmed herself down and took a closer look. Only then did she see clearly what was going on. There seemed to be 4 transparent seals around the little crown princess, trapping her within. As for the unreasonable second miss, she seemed to have gone crazy at this moment. She had gotten a large shovel from somewhere and was pounding on the impenetrable seal wall in front of her. Beside him stood 2 black-clothed secret guards with indifferent expressions. First Madam took a closer look and felt that these 2 young men had a hopeless look on their faces. What's going on? First Madam hurriedly asked the servants who were watching by the pond. The servant knelt down and said, "Madam, it's second Mississippi. She's gone mad. Crazy." First Madam's face looked as though it had been painted with a layer of black paint. She was so angry that her liver hurt. She has indeed gone mad. He even dared to hit the crown princess. He really didn't want to live anymore. Why aren't you pulling him away? Are all of you dead? The servant was about to cry. It's not that we don't want to pull him away. It's just that the crown princess said to let second miss hit him, and not to care about her. First Madam looked a little confused and didn't know what was going on. The little crown princess sat upright in the seal array. Her gaze was cold as she watched the second miss violently pounding on the barrier. Chapter 51-57. Eldest Madam was so angry that she was about to ascend to the heavens and leave her body. She berated. The Count estate actually produced such a disrespectful thing like you. Why aren't you arresting this rebellious dog? Madame Nelu shouted angrily. The servants didn't dare to tarry this time, and hastily swarmed forward to tug at the unreasonable second Miss Fong. Second Miss Fong had long lost her head from anger. She had been chipping away at that defensive wall for so long, but she hadn't even managed to open a freaking small hole. She was so angry that she jumped up and down and cursed non-stop. Now that she saw people coming to arrest her, she used a large shovel to hit them. 2 servants were caught off guard and were hit in the head by her shovel, bleeding profusely on the spot. Madame was so angry that she clutched her chest and cursed repeatedly, "Rebellion, rebellion, rebellion, rebellion. Are you all dead? Go up, bring her over here." Several burly mamas, along with several guards, dashed over. 3 to 5 people pressed second Miss Fong to the ground and forcefully pinned her arms behind her back. They finally managed to subdue this shrew with great difficulty. The little crown princess sat inside her defensive wall from beginning to end and expressionlessly watched the commotion outside. Wei Ziqin hastily walked over. Separated by the defensive wall, her mouth involuntarily twitched as she called out, "Jojo." Arbor waved his hand and removed the defensive wall. He left his stool and strode to his mother's side to greet her. Wei Ziqin was too embarrassed to ask if her daughter was all right. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she was completely fine. It was better not to ask the obvious, Mom. Arbor glanced at his mother and felt that his mother's expression was a bit conflicted and strange. Wei Ziqin coughed lightly and patted her daughter's small hand. It's fine. Mom just wanted to ask you, this what exactly happened? She was fine when she left just now. So how did second Miss Fong provoke her daughter so fearlessly in such a short time? The little stoic pursed her lips and said, "How would I know?" Wei Ziqin. He suddenly felt that he had nothing to say to his daughter. Fong Luiying, who was still standing by the side, hurriedly said, "Madam, there's no need to worry. Actually, it's nothing serious. It's just that second sister's reaction was too extreme." How exactly did second Miss offend the crown princess? First Madam reprimanded her harshly. The maids, whose faces were covered in dirt, lay on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. They could only mumble obsequiously. We heard from second Miss. It seems like the crown princess, she. The maidservants were so scared that they didn't dare to finish their sentence. Standing by the pond, Su Shitao, who was covered in dust and dirt, couldn't help but scream. What else could it be? If she didn't abuse her power to bully others, how could second young Miss possibly fight with her? Shut up. Who are you? First Madam stared at Su Shitao and asked coldly. Irritated by Mrs. Lu's contemptuous gaze, Su Shitao's anger erupted on the spot. Who am I? She was so angry that her nose and mouth were slightly crooked. I am a guest invited by your Count of Huainan's estate. I am Princess Tao of the Prince of Zheng's estate. Your estate must give me an explanation for this matter. Damn it, these people, all of them didn't take her, Su Shitao, seriously at all. They kept asking who she was. Who was she? Shouldn't everyone know who she was? Chapter 51-58. She, impudent. Who are you referring to? First Madam shouted. Immediately, 2 nannies stepped forward and slapped Su Shitao's hand, which was pointing in the direction of Arbor. Su Shitao was so angry that his eyes turned red, but he hadn't shouted yet. He was frightened by the second young Miss Fong's piercing voice. Fong Mingyue was so angry that she couldn't stop kicking and twisting her body. She was tied up with a rope by 3 to 5 servants and the old nannies. They dragged her to First Madam and pressed her body down to kneel on the ground. Seeing that she was disobedient, the nannies were so angry that they pinched her arm a few times. Fong Mingyue shouted even louder. She exerted force on her wrists and flung one of the old nannies away. She kicked a servant in the chest. Everyone only heard a crisp crack sound. That person flew out and was heavily thrown into the corner of the wall. Her head tilted, and she was on the verge of death. It could be seen that Fang Mingyue's kick was a killing move. The second young miss climbed up from the ground in a sorry state. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "You dare to treat me like this? You wicked servants! See if I don't cripple you, ah!" The servants and old nannies were all silent out of fear. At this moment, they suddenly saw First Madam raise her hand and let a few nimble guards subdue the second young Mississippi. They couldn't help but sigh in relief. After all, the second young Miss's martial arts were not bad, and her cultivation was already a level 5 spiritual master. It was indeed difficult for these low-level servants to deal with her. However, the guards beside First Madam were different. Each of them was a level 6 or 7 spiritual master. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with the second young Mississippi. Let go of me, you wicked servants! How dare you? Let go. Second young Miss Fang screamed. Her kicks and bites couldn't stop the guards from dragging her. They threw her in front of First Madam. Fang Mingyue felt like a dead dog being thrown to the ground. A trace of humiliation and hatred burned from the bottom of her heart. "Mrs. Liu, you dare to treat me like this? Aren't you afraid that when my father comes, he will give you 2 slaps? At this moment, First Madam had already been helped to sit down. When she heard Fang Mingyue's words, she immediately sneered. "Fang Mingyue, you are indeed very bold. You dare to speak so presumptuously in front of your official mother. It seems that all these years, I have indeed neglected to discipline you concubine-born sons and daughters. That's why your concubine mother has taught you to be so undisciplined and out of control." "Men, slap him." Fang Mingyue was forced to kneel on the ground by the 2 guards. She couldn't move at all. She could only watch the fierce-looking old maid beside Madam rolling up her sleeves and walking towards her. Fang Mingyue immediately screamed in panic. What are you doing? You dare to hit me? My father won't let you off. Father! Mother! Father! Slap! A heavy slap interrupted Fang Mingyue's mournful cries. With this slap, Fang Mingyue only felt her mouth fill with a salty and wet taste. The maidservant Xiao Mian had sharp eyes and called out, "Young miss, your mouth is broken. You're bleeding." Fang Mingyue was so angry that she almost fainted. Since she was young, when had she ever suffered such grievances? That old maid was really ruthless. With 3 slaps, her ears buzzed and she saw stars. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and tears and snot flowed down her face. Chapter 51-59. Mingyue, my pitiful child, ah! Little Madame Bao cried out in a shrill voice and stumbled towards them. She threw herself at her daughter and hugged her head tightly. She shouted, "Who dares to come forward? Who dares to touch my daughter? If anyone dares to touch my daughter, I will fight them to the death." "Pull Second Madam away," First Madam said coldly. Madam, do you want to beat my daughter to death?" Little Madame Bao glared at First Madam with a pair of venomous eyes and shouted angrily, "You can't do this. My daughter is beautiful. If she has injured you, can your Liu family bear this responsibility?" Fang Luiying immediately stood in front of her mother and shouted angrily, "Second Madam, you dare to speak to Madam like this? If you want to beat my daughter to death, then beat me to death first. Even if I become a malicious spirit in my next life, I won't let you evil people off. What are you all doing?" A man's angry shout came from the entrance of Willow Courtyard. For a moment, the bustling noises all fell silent. "I've made a fool of myself in front of the heir and lords." Count Huainan Fang Xiangui cupped his hands at a young gentleman behind him. The heir of the Duke of Jianping, Mo Kuan, had been waving the folding fan in his hand with a flirtatious smile. However, when he saw the little crown princess's expressionless face, he instantly froze. He almost knelt down in front of Count Huainan. "You should have said earlier that you invited the crown princess. If you said you invited her, we wouldn't have come. Aren't you tricking your father? Of all the people you could trick, you tricked your grandfather." His father, the old Duke of Jianping, was very wise not to come. Why did he have to come to the Count of Huainan's estate? This time, he met the little fiend. The heir of the Duke of Jianping slapped himself in the face. Everyone looked at him in bewilderment. their eyes wide open, and their mouths wide open. Heir? Count Huainan looked at this young gentleman in confusion. Mo Kuan came back to his senses, and silently lit a candle for himself. He smiled stiffly. Just now there seemed to be a mosquito. Everyone hurriedly nodded in agreement, surrounding him like stars surrounding the moon. However, Mo Kuan took a few steps back, and deliberately put on a nonchalant expression. He waved his hand and said, since Count Huainan has family matters to attend to, then this heir will not disturb you any further. Goodbye. Your Highness. Your Highness. Seeing that the Crown Prince was about to flee, everyone was speechless. Stop right there. A clear voice rang out. Everyone watched as Mo Shitsi, who had run to the entrance of the garden in 3 steps, fell to his knees with a plop. The speed at which Prince Jianpei's face changed was truly breathtaking. When he turned around while kneeling, a smile blossomed on his face like a blooming flower. Little brother greets sister-in-law. Hello, sister-in-law. What bad things did you do? The little stoic shouted coldly. The heir of the Duke of Jianpei was about to cry. He looked at Arbor innocently and said, No, I didn't do anything bad. No one knew that before he answered this question, his mind had gone through 1,000 twists and turns, recalling everything he had done in the past 5 days. He really didn't do anything bad. Then why did you run away when you saw me? Sir Jojo shouted. You have a guilty conscience. Did you go out on the streets to rob an innocent girl again? Chapter 5160. I don't dare, this younger brother doesn't dare. Mo Kuan waved his hand miserably. This younger brother has been abstaining from meat and reciting Buddhist scriptures at home recently. I'm abstinent of worldly desires and charitable deeds. Even royal father said that this younger brother has recently made great progress. The little stoic pulled a long face. Is that so? Yes. The king of Jianpei's heir nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. He said pitifully, Sister-in-law, ever since this younger brother was taught a lesson by you, then completely turned over a new leaf and became a new person. My royal brothers can all testify. Wei Ziqing couldn't help but twitch her mouth, and she looked at this child sympathetically. Look at how scared this child was. Their family's Jojo's deterrence was increasingly surpassing Ling Rant's. If I find out that you're doing any illegal activities again, even your father can't protect you. Be careful of your dog head. Arbor clenched his fists tightly, and a handful of fine sand leaked out from between his fingers. Mo Kuan nearly pissed himself in fright, and he scrambled forward while howling repeatedly. Sister-in-law. I swear. I've already been taught a lesson by you, sister-in-law. I won't bully the villagers again, won't do any bad things again. Fuck, lil sister-in-law is getting scarier. Such a sturdy rock turned into fine sand in a matter of minutes in her small hands. Well, how scary. How can elder brother stand such a shrew? So scary. Women are so scary. Well, the little crown princess clapped her hands and waved expressionlessly like she was swatting a fly. Let's go. Thank you, sister-in-law. Prince Mo was scared witless. He covered his head and scurried out of Willow Courtyard like a rat. He reckoned that he would have to take a detour whenever he saw Count Huainan's estate for the next 3 years. It was too scary. It was simply traumatizing. Prince Mo scurried out of Count Huainan's estate with his head in his hands and almost bumped into someone. Hey, little Kuan, what are you doing? Why are you walking so carelessly? You almost bumped into the crown prince. A helpless voice rang next to his ear. Mo Kuan's tease. The crown prince, who was dressed in a brocade robe and had his hair tied up by a jade crown, was staring at him with a serious expression. The crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace and the crown prince of the Duke of Linchuan followed behind. The one who spoke was the crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace, Mo Lu, who was looking at him sympathetically. He winked at him, telling him to be tactful. Big brother. I didn't do anything. I really don't have one. Mo Lian looked at him expressionlessly. Why do you look so guilty? Did you offend your sister-in-law again? His wife still had to follow his mother-in-law to Count Huainan's mansion on rainy days. She hadn't come back for so long, so he had to pick her up. The crown prince was in a bad mood when he saw Imo-kun. This fellow was running away like a rat. He must have provoked Charles again. No, 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 no. No, big brother. Imo-kun waved his hand pitifully. Big brother, I've turned over a new leaf. The corner of Imo-lu's mouth twitched. He lowered his head and coughed softly. Elder brother, I see that little Kun hasn't gone out to cause any trouble recently. He should have learned well. Imo-kun nodded repeatedly and cast a grateful glance at the crown prince of the Duke of Eternal Peace. Imo-lian looked at him coldly. Have you seen your sister-in-law? Yes, yes, I saw her. She's inside. Imo-kun hurriedly said. There's a crazy woman. She's hitting my sister-in-law. Big brother. You should quickly go in and take a look. This person's brain went haywire, and he almost bit his tongue after saying that. What? Chapter 5161. Imo-kun couldn't care that much now. In any case, he was already unlucky enough. No matter what, he had to drag a few more unlucky people down with him. As long as he could successfully divert his brother's attention to others, he didn't care who he harmed. It was fine as long as he was fine. Greetings to the crown princess. Count Huainan stepped forward and bowed to Arbor with a complicated expression. Just based on the behavior of the Prince of Jianping's heir, he had a rough idea of this crown princess. She wasn't someone to be trifled with. Otherwise, why would the Prince of Jianping's heir be scared witless and run away? Moreover, which of the people around him wasn't a reputable official in court? But they all respectfully stepped forward to greet her with smiles like a spring breeze. Which one of them wasn't extremely courteous to the crown princess? From this, it could be seen that this expressionless little crown princess was quite powerful. Count Huainan's heart was in turmoil. He lowered his head to look at the weeping Madame Bao and his second daughter. He deliberated and said, Crown Princess, please forgive my daughter. My daughter is still young and doesn't know the rules. I don't know why she offended the Crown Princess. Husband. Madame Bao hugged her daughter and cried bitterly. Husband, you have to save us. Madame is forcing us to our deaths. Count Huainan coldly swept a glance at first Madame Lu. The latter didn't fear his cold gaze at all. She seemed to be used to Count Huainan's attitude and coldly replied, Husband, you don't know. When this madam came just now, I saw second Miss punching and kicking the crown princess through the defensive wall. This is the attitude of an official. Is this the upbringing of second madam in our Count Huainan's mansion? Count Huainan was rebuked by first madam, and was so angry that he couldn't speak for a while. In the end, he only said dryly, Then you don't have to beat them to death. Husband, I'm not criticizing you, but there should be a limit to how much you spoil your daughter. Outsiders don't know and think that this madam doesn't know how to teach a concubine's daughter. But you don't know that in our Duke of Huainan's mansion, the daughters of concubines are raised and educated under the feet of concubines. Even madam can't interfere or make the decision. Madam, Madame Bao shouted angrily and angrily. Did I say anything wrong? First Madame Lu sneered. Today, Feng Mingyue dared to be so impudent and boldly offend the crown princess. Isn't it all because Lord and second concubine spoiled her? Master, look at what Madame is saying. Little Madame Bao was furious. She clutched her chest and shouted, How can this be caused by me and Master spoiling her? It's clearly, what is it? First Madame couldn't help but sneer. Could it be that this stupid woman wanted to push all the blame to the little crown princess? She was too stupid, too hopeless. All right, stop arguing. The Count of Huainan, Feng Xiangui, felt his face burning. With so many officials and colleagues present, his own family was in such a chaotic situation. How could he, the Count of Huainan, show his face? Crown Princess. Count of Huainan cupped his hands at the little stoic crown princess. Please forgive my daughter's momentary anger, for the sake of Grand Consort Feng. The little crown princess said crisply, Unforgivable. Wei Ziqing covered her mouth with her handkerchief and coughed lightly to cover the laughter that almost came out. Her miss was a bit adorable no matter how she looked at her. Then she looked at second miss, who was kneeling on the ground with disheveled hair and a sorry figure, and felt even more disgusted. Chapter 5162. Count Huainan's old face stiffened slightly before he hurriedly smiled apologetically. Crown Princess, please forgive this old official's second daughter. She offended you just now and offended the Crown Princess. The two of them punched and kicked me in front of everyone. The young Crown Princess pointed at Fang Mingyue and Su Shitao. They. Her small face was extremely solemn. Beat me. Everyone. The Crown Princess could actually say these words so smoothly. Beat you. Who beat you? No, beat you. She used a large shovel and kept hitting the defensive wall, but she didn't even touch a single strand of hair. That counts as beating? Count Huainan was drenched in cold sweat as he thought. Today's matter is going to be troublesome. If the young Crown Princess was unwilling to relent and let his second daughter off, then today's matter wouldn't be so easily resolved. Count Huainan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead as his mind spun. He couldn't help but forcefully explain. Actually, this matter, you can't completely blame Mingyue. Arbor turned to glare at Count Huainan. Who else can you blame if not her? If she didn't insist on inviting this Crown Princess to this willow courtyard to look at some koi fish, how could there be so many troublesome matters? The young Crown Princess pointed at Fang Mingyue. It's her. She was the one who insisted on inviting me over. If Count Huainan could beat someone right now, he really wanted to raise his hand and slap his youngest daughter. Are you stupid? Are you bored out of your mind? Why did you have to provoke such a big figure for no reason? You invited her over, and now you're riding a tiger and can't get off. It's really easier to invite the devil than to send the devil away. Crown Princess, can't she speak herself? Why does she keep asking you to interrupt her? The young Crown Princess waved her hand impatiently, directly interrupting Count Huainan's words. Just now, she hit this princess 168 times. Now this consort wants to return the favor to her. Do you think this is fair? Everyone looked at the little Crown Princess in bewilderment. They saw that the Crown Princess's little stoic face was brimming with a sense of righteousness and seriousness. Her expression looked very serious. Everyone didn't think much of it, and nodded their heads in agreement. There was nothing wrong with that. He had hit the Crown Princess 168 times, so it was reasonable for the Crown Princess to demand that he return the favor. Big bow. The young Crown Prince consort shouted. A small golem covered in black light emerged from the star field with a whoosh. The moment he landed, his body expanded to the height of an adult. He cupped his fists at Fang Xinggui's family and said, Uncle Fang, sorry for the offense. The Crown Princess has ordered that second Miss Fang be beaten 168 times. Execute it now. Anyone who obstructs the execution will be beaten as well. Then, under Fang Xinggui's stupefied expression, the golem moved and jumped forward. Without another word, he picked up second Miss Fang, who was lying in Madame Bao's arms, and punched her chest. Second Miss Fang was hit to the ground, and she curled up in pain. The golem de Bao didn't have any tender feelings for the fairer sex, and stood up by grabbing second Miss Fang's hair. Like a sack of rice, she grabbed second Miss Fang in her hands and slammed her left and right. Madame Bao fainted from anger. The maidservants and nannies on the side anxiously called out, Second madam, second madam, second madam. Fang Xiangui gaped at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Chapter 5163. This Crown Prince consort, in front of him, in front of all the court officials, just like this, treated her daughter like a piece of rag, letting the mechanical puppet swing her back and forth for fun. His old face was so angry that it was distorted, and he was panting heavily. If he could make a decision, he definitely would not let her treat his daughter like this. But now who could help him? Stop! Fang Xiangui finally could not hold back his anger. Stop! Tell me clearly, which crazy woman has the guts to hit your sister-in-law? When Emo Lien stepped into Willow Courtyard with a cold face, she immediately saw the situation. The golem de Bao was currently showing off its might in the garden, holding a rag in its hand, and was currently flinging it left, right, up, down and down. There were only dong, sounds that sounded like heads hitting the brick floor. And for a moment people were dazzled. The Duke of Eternal Peace's heir Emolu could not help but raise his hand to support his forehead. He coughed lightly and said, "Elder brother, this place is so messy. Why don't we go to the front hall and wait for sister-in-law?" At this time, Emolian had already silently retracted her leg from Willow Courtyard's entrance. She expressionlessly made an end sound. "It's so messy, let's go." Emokuen, this brat, sure enough, nothing good can come out of a dog's mouth. How was this a crazy woman violently beating his wife? Wasn't this his wife teaching some unlucky fellow a lesson? His wife was teaching someone a lesson, so he could not spoil his dear little cutie's mood. He quickly retreated and went to the front hall to wait for her. Emokuen held onto a large tree with one hand, trembling as he hid behind the tree, only daring to reveal two black eyes. As he looked, he could not help but shudder. Lil's sister-in-law was definitely not to be provoked. Once provoked, she would immediately go berserk. Who the hell could endure this? "Ah, Your Highness? It's His Highness the Crown Prince." Fong Boy's eyes were really sharp. He caught a glimpse of Prince Mo's figure that was about to leave Willow Garden, and immediately called out loudly, as if he had seen a relative he hadn't seen in 800 years. He rushed forward with tears in his eyes, and knelt on the ground with a plop. He said in a tearful voice, "I beg Your Highness to uphold justice for this humble subject. My second daughter is about to be taught a lesson by the Crown Princess. Your Highness, please give the order for the Crown Princess to stop." The group of old courtiers looked at each other and stared at Grand Duke Fong, as if they were looking at an idiot. Was there something wrong with this guy's head? It was well known that the Crown Prince doted on his wife. Who in the entire divine land did not know this? Don't you see that even the Crown Prince doesn't want to get involved in this mess? You actually ran to His Highness to look for trouble. You even dare to ask His Highness to issue an edict to order the Crown Princess to let your daughter go? Did you eat some lofty leopard's guts? You're so arrogant that there's no end to it. At this moment, the little Crown Princess also saw her husband, and her eyes suddenly brightened. When Emolian saw Xiao Xiao's expression, he joyfully strode forward and grasped her hand as he said, "Xiao Xiao, Xiao Xiao. Did you know that the rain outside has stopped? Since it's not raining, let's go back." Fong Boy looked at His Highness the Crown Prince in astonishment. His Highness did not seem to care about what he said just now. Why did he say something completely unrelated the moment he opened his mouth? If that was the case, could it be that his tearful words just now were all for nothing? Chapter 5164. At this moment, De Bao had completed his 168th beating. He also released second young Miss Fong, and threw her to the side. His gaze then turned to Su Shitao, who was hiding at the side. Su Shitao was about to faint from fright. Her entire body trembled as she cried out in alarm. Don't come over. Arbor, make this beast stay away from me. If you dare to treat me like this, my Prince Zheng's estate will not let you off." "How do you want to not let her off?" Prince Mo, who originally had a gentle smile on his face, immediately turned ruthless. His cold and sharp gaze shot towards Su Shitao. The latter jumped in fright and almost fell to the ground. Su Shitao's lips trembled, and her entire body couldn't help but shiver. She shook her head and said, Your Highness Crown Prince, I didn't mean it that way." Arbor raised his small hand and ordered, "De Bao." "Yes, little master." De Bao jumped in front of Su Shitao. His metal square face revealed a comical smile at her. "You just beat Master 168 times. According to the rules, all of this should be returned to you. Now, I'm going to beat you 68 times. Are you convinced?" I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced." Su Shitao shrieked. When did I beat her 168 times? The one who beat her through the defensive wall was Fong Mingyue from the beginning to the end. Not me, not me. Master said you beat her, so you beat her." The golem roared angrily. It stretched out its legs and jumped. Its jumping power was excellent, and it quickly pounced in front of Fong Mingyue. Without a word, it picked her up and beat her up just like how it had done before. Su Shitao covered her face and cried out bitterly. She kept shouting, big brother, save me, big brother." The little crown princess clenched her fists. She wanted little steel teeth and said nonchalantly, "Beat them up until they have to make a detour when they see me in the future." Annoying. Who had the time to chat with these orioles and swallows every few days? If she couldn't raise them properly, she would beat them up until they were all obedient when they saw her in the future. When the empress received the news, it was already dinner time. Hearing that the young crown princess retaliated against the miss of Prince Jing's mansion and the second miss of Count Huainan's mansion, she held her chopsticks in a daze. "Empress? Empress?" Zhenju, who was always by her side, called out to her softly. The empress came back to her senses and said with a sigh, "She looks like me. She looks exactly like me when I was young. If she could make a move, she would make a move. Who would be willing to talk nonsense with you all day long?" She was indeed by Wuxia's daughter-in-law. She was still as elegant as she was back then. The corners of the palace servants' mouths twitched. They coughed lightly and lowered their heads without saying a word. "Men pass on my orders." The Count of Huainan did not teach his daughter well, so he was fined half a year of his salary and suspended from court for half a month. As for the second miss of the Fong family, she actually dared to beat up the crown princess and the young imperial grandson in public. Just punish her. Punish her to go to Tsiyun Nunnery to cultivate for half a month, so that she can get rid of the evil aura all over her body. Crown Princess, the Fong family sent an apology gift. There are a total of 3 carriages parked outside the palace. The little Crown Princess was fiddling with a poisonous plant that she had recently cultivated. When she heard this, she didn't even raise her head. Accept it. What apology gift? It was clearly a gift from Fong Luiying to thank her. First, Madame Lu's illness should be getting better. Little Madame Bao followed her weeping daughter to the nunnery to take care of her. When she returned half a month later, eldest Madame's illness should have almost recovered. Chapter 5165. Dad, Big Brother Boohoo. Su Shitao, who was in pain all over his body, lay on the bed and cried while pounding the bed. "I don't care. I've been beaten to such a miserable state. I'm in pain all over. Big brother, you must seek justice for me." Suhi also gnashed his teeth and said, "Kong, you must give your sister an explanation for this matter." Explanation? Eunuch, you asked His Highness to give Su Shitao an explanation. What does His Highness want to explain? How can he explain it? Can His Highness climb over the wall to the East Palace with a sword and beat the Crown Princess in front of the Crown Prince? Or can he rush to His Majesty and the Empress with a whip and ask for an explanation? Consort Shi Yongyan sneered. Su Shitao, if you ask your big brother to seek justice, who can do it for your big brother? Sister-in-law, His Majesty said that Count Huainan didn't manage his family well, and his family was in chaos. He couldn't even manage his family well, let alone deal with the court affairs. Now, His Majesty personally issued an edict to punish Count Huainan's salary. Not only that, but he also ordered Count Huainan not to attend the court for half a month. Do you know how Count Huainan's unruly girl is now? She was sent to Tsiyun Nunnery by the imperial family to cultivate. His Majesty said that if she can't learn the rules and wash away the hostility on her, she shouldn't return to the capital. Do you understand? Don't return to the capital. Do you think His Majesty doesn't want to punish you? But you're smart enough not to fight with the Crown Princess directly, so His Majesty can't find a reason to punish you. But your brother, your big brother, he was implicated because of you. His Majesty even dismissed him from the inspection mission in Guangnan City and sent other imperial envoys to him. Enough! Mo Shikong shouted angrily and stopped Consort Shi Yongyan's endless words. Shi Yongyan couldn't help sneering. She glanced at Su Shitao, who was lying on the bed and howling, and her eyes were full of disdain and disgust. Do you think the second daughter of Count Huainan will have a good life in the future? The person she offended was the Crown Princess. Right now, the entire capital knows about her feisty temper. Do you think she can find a good family in the future? Who would marry such a girl? A woman who had been ordered by the emperor to go to Xiayun Nunnery to cultivate, devote herself to doing good deeds, and wash away her hostility. Who else would dare to want her? She's completely finished. Have you said enough? Emo Shikong roared. Sister-in-law, I know. Do you dislike our family? Do you think that our family has come back and divided your properties in the prince's mansion? You've always despised our family. You think that we're outsiders and shouldn't fight with you for the gold, silver, pearls, and jade of this prince's mansion, and shouldn't come back to annoy you, right? But I am Big Brother's younger sister after all. Before you say these heart-piercing words, have you ever thought that I am your sister-in-law, Big Brother's younger sister? I'm just speaking the truth. If I said something unpleasant, please forgive me, younger sister. Princess Consort Zheng could not help but sneer. I know. Sister-in-law, you've never treated us as your family. Younger sister, what are you talking about? You're His Highness's younger sister. How could His Highness not care about you? I'm sure Princess Consort doesn't have this idea. A soft voice emerged in the midst of all the crying and shouting. Chapter 5166. The Princess Consort of Zheng, Shi Yongyan, was so angry that she felt dizzy. She sat on the armchair and pursed her lips, her sharp eyes shooting mercilessly at the person who spoke. Lin Wun'er was so frightened that she almost jumped up from her stool. She hastily shrank to Emo Shikong's side and tightly clung to his sleeve, calling out pitifully, Your Highness. Shi Yongyan, enough is enough. The man reached out and wrapped his arms around his beloved concubine's waist, glaring fiercely at Shi Yongyan. Shi Yongyan couldn't help but laugh out loud. As she laughed, tears flowed down uncontrollably. Emo Shikong, sooner or later, you will be harmed by these people. There's no medicine for regret in this world. Today, she said these words, and was unwilling to say anything else. Shi Yongyan threw down these words, and immediately got up to leave. Su Shitao burst into tears and shrieked. Big brother, look at sister-in-law, look at what my sister-in-law said. Is our family a plague? Don't we have the right to stay in the Prince of Zheng's Fu? Younger sister, don't cry. The Princess Consort didn't mean it that way. Lin Wun'er hastily stepped forward to coax her. However, Su Shitao didn't give her any face, and even flung her hand away in disdain. Lin Shi, you're just a concubine. What are you doing in my room without any manners? Is this young lady's boudoir a place where a lowly person like you can enter? Lin Shi seemed to be frightened. She stood up from the bed and retreated a few steps, one hand clutching her stomach as she looked at Su Shitao with teary eyes. Tower! Emo Shikong berated and stepped forward to support his beloved concubine. Su Shitao pounded the bed and shouted angrily, Big brother! You actually yelled at your own younger sister for this shameless concubine. This woman came to our Fu with no status and a pregnant belly. Do you know that the streets and alleys outside are all talking about your romantic affairs? Everyone is laughing at our Prince of Zheng's Fu. How do you want me, an unmarried girl, to find a good family to marry in the future? Others think that our Prince of Zheng's Fu is foul and full of shameless sluts. Shut up. Emo Shikong was so angry that smoke was coming out of his head. His younger sister's words were like a slap to his face. Moreover, it was a series of slaps that burned his face. Whoa, Your Highness, this concubine cannot live anymore. Mrs. Lin called out coquettishly, and threw herself into Emo Shikong's arms. While rubbing her eyes, she cried, This concubine actually insulted an unmarried miss like this. This concubine can only take my child to die with me. Whoa, no one is willing to give this concubine and my child a way out. Emo Shikong hurriedly hugged her waist lovingly and whispered, Wun'er, don't be sad. Sister is just spouting nonsense. Don't listen to her nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, he glared angrily at Su Shitao and shouted sternly, Tao, you're really too presumptuous and audacious. Big brother already told you not to provoke that crown prince consort, but you just didn't listen. Now that he's beaten up like this, he's not even willing to settle down even though he's bedridden. Your eldest sister-in-law is right about a few things. The Count of Huainan was fined his salary and suspended from court by the emperor. Big brother was also implicated by this matter. The incident in Guangnan City was a warning from the emperor to your big brother. If there's a next time, your big brother may also be unlucky. So you really have to cultivate your body and mind well. Don't make trouble again. During this time, stay at home and don't go anywhere. Chapter 5167. The next day, the sky was clear, and the sun hung high above the treetops. Early in the morning, the little crown princess led a group of children to the imperial garden to stretch and do some morning exercises. Emo floated around her twice and kept circling around her. Arbor stopped what he was doing and tilted his head to look at her. Do you have something to say to me? Emo, who was floating around, nodded with a dazed expression. Arbor waved at her and asked her to sit beside him. What do you want to say? Why don't you try using my gold-beaded talisman pen and see if you can write on the jade talisman? Mo's ability to express herself was very problematic. She seemed to find it difficult to express what she wanted to say. Arbor wanted her to see if she could write down her request directly. Upon hearing this, the dazed emoji repeatedly nodded her head. She circled Xiao Mu in circles and finally found a home for her. This soul floated down beside Arbor and held the gold-beaded talisman pen that Arbor took out. Sure enough, she carved a line of small words on the jade talisman. Arbor took the jade talisman and looked at it. He looked at her with a serious expression and asked hesitantly, Are you sure you want to do this? The dumbfounded Emo nodded. You saw me use medicine to save people before, and thought that I might be able to make this kind of pill? So the last few times you circled around me, you actually wanted to ask for this? Emo nodded repeatedly. There was no expression on her dazed face, but Arbor could feel that she seemed to be relieved. It was as if she was finally able to express what she wanted to express. Her face was full of relief. But you're only half a soul right now. If you want this pill, Arbor suddenly paused and had a look of realization. You know where to find your main body, don't you? Emo nodded again. But once you start taking this pill, if you stop taking it one day, it might cause you to be poisoned. Also, if you continuously take it for 100 days, there might be no turning back. Are you sure you want to do this? Emo nodded without hesitation. Or perhaps, after you consume it, you will even forget about me. Emo was stunned. Then he waved his hand at Arbor. Xiaomu curled her lips in a rare smile as she patted this soul. I respect your decision, and will give you the pill later. But before that, I have something for you. With a wave of her small hand, a ball of light flew to the top of her palm and floated up and down. Little Monkey, who was lying at the side, immediately jumped up and sniffed. Wow, there's the smell of an ancient sacred beast. Kong Kong, Guang Guang, the little monkey, and Emo all gathered around and stared at the ceiling light above Arbor's palm, blinking their eyes. Within the ball of light, there was a small snow-white thing curled up. Its entire body was buried in its large furry tail. Only a small snow-white horn on its small head could be seen swaying slightly. Arbor raised his hand and touched the ball of light. He sighed softly and said, This is the little unicorn that my master cut open. It was born before a month, and was born with a congenital deficiency. That's why it grew very slowly. Perhaps it still needs 100 years or 1,000 years before it can awaken. Or perhaps it won't be able to come out for generations. But I feel that it's very lonely. You're also very lonely. If the two of you can be companions in the future, it's actually quite good, Arbor said warmly. Chapter 5168. Just like a long time ago, Qiuqiu and I were companions in the void. It's really hard to survive alone in such an empty place like the void. It's much better to have a companion by your side, regardless of whether it could speak or not, regardless of whether it could wake up or not. As long as there was something by her side, she would at least feel that there was an end to her path. There was still some hope in life, wasn't there? Just as Arbor finished speaking, a small emerald head popped out from behind her neck. Qiuqiu, who was rocking back and forth with 2 tender leaves on its head, called out, Master, don't be sad. Qiuqiu will always be by your side. Why did Qiuqiu feel like someone was holding its head and lifting it up? Its 2 black beady eyes kept blinking upwards. After looking for a while, it realized that Crown Prince had arrived at some point, and was currently holding it up and throwing it behind his back. Chio hurriedly used its two thin branches to hook onto his collar and hung it on the back of his neck. It huffed and puffed. Masta, Crown Prince was a bad silver. Every time he saw Chio by the little Masta's side, he liked to throw it out and kick it out. Emoyi reached out to take the little unicorn's ball of light and held it in her hands. When her dazed face turned towards Arbor, she tried her best to squeeze out a stiff expression that didn't look like a smile. Arbor said expressionlessly, "This soul fragment of yours isn't like the main body. There's no need to force yourself to make a difficult expression." Emoyi hurriedly restrained the strange expression on her face and nodded repeatedly. She held the little unicorn and gestured with her hands. Little Monkey said from the side, "Big sister, my sister said that she also wants to give you something in return." "There's no need." Arbor's face was stoic as she said expressionlessly, "Your sister is penniless now. The Sun-Moon secret realm that she used to live in is now with me. What else could she have? What could she give?" Hee. Little Monkey hurriedly gestured at Emoyi and nodded repeatedly. "Big sister, you're right. My sister is a pauper now." Arbor glanced at Emo and saw her holding the ceiling light with both hands with a dazed expression. He couldn't help but facepalm. Emolian laughed and said, "If you give it to her, she will only praise you like this. Don't tell me you want her to be like this for the rest of her life, holding on to this little unicorn?" Arbor muttered, "It's so hard for me. I'm really worried about this dumb little fool." After pondering for a moment, she took out a jade tablet from her pocket and tossed it onto Emoli's body. A red string was attached to the jade tablet and slowly hung it around Mo's neck. Arbor heaved a sigh of relief and said to himself, "Although it's only half a soul, it's still a powerful soul. It can still use the storage talisman." She instructed Emo to put the little unicorn into the storage talisman first. After doing all this, Emo lowered his head and caressed the jade talisman around his neck. He fondled it lovingly. "Why can a soul like her touch the storage talisman that you drew?" Emolian couldn't help but ask curiously. "In the past, I couldn't see people with soul bodies. However, I can still touch this half-soul body of hers. How do I explain this?" Arbor pursed her lips and said with a rueful expression, "This is probably what they mean by the 3,000 great Daos are all connected by a mysterious force." Little Monkey nodded profusely at the side. Big sister's meaning can be explained with one word, fate. Emolian nodded and laughed loudly. Chapter 5169. "Emo, look here." Arbor suddenly called out to her. Emo, who was in a daze, turned his head and stared at her. The plain-clothed wooden and expressionless little stoic extended her right hand and spread open her fingers. Clusters of snowflakes trembled in her hand as if they had a mind of their own, and formed a white sphere that continuously spun back and forth. The little stoic's eyes flickered, and she flicked her slender hand backwards. A snowball shot into the rockery behind her with a whoosh. In no more than a second, the entire rockery crumbled from the inside out with a rumble, shattering into a pile of mud and foam. Fortunately, she had already set up defensive walls around this area before she acted. The loud noise was completely isolated and didn't attract other people's attention. Mo's wooden eyes suddenly moved, and she subconsciously extended her hands and clapped with all her might. "Do you understand now?" Emo nodded vigorously. "Give it a try." Emo floated forward a few steps and extended her right hand accordingly. In a split second, clusters of electricity floated back and forth on her palm. However, even after a long while, she still couldn't fuse them into a sphere. Arbor expressionlessly walked to her side and demonstrated again. He asked coldly, "Do you remember now?" Emo nodded again. The little monkey standing behind them couldn't help but raise her hand to cover her face. She didn't know if it was her misconception, but she kept feeling like her older sister was an idiot. She nodded at everything she was asked. But when she did it, she was clumsy and didn't do anything properly. Arbor patiently repeated the process several times until Emo succeeded. She fused the clusters of electricity in her hand into a small ball of lightning and flew it over, exploding with considerable power from the inside out. The little monkey excitedly jumped up and clapped repeatedly, shouting, Older sister, you succeeded. Emma looked at the little stoic with bright eyes, and nodded repeatedly. She pointed at the small ball of lightning above her palm. However, Arbor merely glanced at her expressionlessly. He reached out and gently brushed aside the snowball in his hand. That snowball rapidly elongated, and abruptly transformed into an ice bow. A long ice crystal arrowhead condensed in his right hand. With a single arrow, the row of ground in front of him exploded with a boom, as if millions of arrowheads had split open at the same time, and exploded into pieces. Snow explosion spell explosive arrow. 9 Heavens lightning sword. Skills chapter, Earthwood technique. Xiao Mu taught Emo the spirit division records techniques that she had learned and mastered one move after another. She patiently demonstrated and practiced them over and over again until she grasped them. Lord Kong Kong and Lord Guang Guang supported their chins with one hand and sat at the stone table in a daze. Wow, what do you think the benefactress is doing? She wants to teach a second version of her. It's obvious. Lord Guang Guang nodded his little bald head. I really pity you weak chicken humans. One fierce woman is already very scary. And in the future, there will be 2 fierce women. How are you going to spend your days like this? Do you think should I recite a mind-clearing incantation for benefactress? What should we do with such a huge amount of hostility? As he spoke, the slow-witted Emo held a sword that flickered with lightning as he swiftly leaped down from the sky, and his sword seemed to have slashed apart the sky as he fiercely descended to the ground. Everything in this area of the garden was completely destroyed. Everything was reduced to nothingness when the sword fell. Amitba, flowers and grass are all living beings. Benefactresses, please don't cause any more destruction. The little monk puffed up his chubby cheeks and nagged very solemnly. Chapter 5170. Little Monkey jumped up and applauded with all his might. Although his sister was a little stupid, she was born with outstanding talent. Even if her intelligence was not high enough, her foundation was still there. In just half a day, she was able to learn so many moves. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Arbor kept his thunder sword and took a step forward. He raised his hand and patted Mo's shoulder. In the future, if someone chases you into the void, my sword will be the first to not let him off. Mo's mouth twitched, revealing a stiff smile. Little monk Kong Kong rested his chin on his hands. He turned his head and looked at Prince Emo who was sitting beside him. Under the golden sunlight, that elegant and handsome crown prince was also supporting his chin with his hands. He was staring at the female benefactor. There seemed to be a light flashing in his eyes. Your Highness, Crown Princess. Kai Xiu hurriedly walked along a small path and called out while looking back and forth. Arbor waved his hand and removed the defensive barrier. Kai Xiu turned her head and saw everyone appearing in front of her. She also saw the ruins of the rockery and the flower bed. She opened her mouth so wide that she could stuff a duck egg in it. Heavens, the crown prince and his wife, this early in the morning, said that they were going to take a stroll in the garden. They actually raised a corner of the garden to the ground. Let's go back and have lunch. Little Monkey jumped up and raised his little hand to cheer. Emo floated 2 steps forward and tilted her head to look forward. She saw that under the light of the sun, a beautiful woman in plain clothes was walking beside the crown prince. The fragrance of the 2 plants was like the background of a painting. In an instant, it was as if it could be frozen into eternity and could never be forgotten. Friend. 2 words floated in her heart. Close friend. After the song ended, the leaves in the garden rustled down. The woman left the zither and stood up to bow to the roof in front of her. She stood there silently for a long time. For a long time, there was no sound in the garden. Only the cold wind brushed past her face. The woman in thin clothes slightly lowered her head. She did not make any sound. Until an unknown amount of time later, a faint voice came from the roof. You can leave. Only then did the woman raise her head slightly and call out, Young Master. Young Master Omega Kotoka glanced at her coldly. Just this icy glare made Miss Rand swallow her words. After bowing, he turned around and left the garden. Chin Xian lay on the eaves and looked up at the dim starry sky. Holding a wine pot in one hand, he looked into the dark night with a cold gaze. Ling floated to his side and sighed. What should we do? I received the exact information today. That king of Duoluo is completely useless now. I don't know if he's gone crazy or if he's lost his mind. In any case, he can't be used anymore. Many of the men we sent out have been encircled by the Crown Prince's men in the past 2 days. And there have been many casualties. Do you think there's a need to continue? I just didn't want him to be so happy. In the end, the decision she made herself even more unhappy. Qin Xen tossed the wine pot and flipped over to sit up. He drew a long sword with one hand and flew out of the room. He brandished his sword in the room to vent the anger in his heart. If we attack the imperial city now, what do you think our chances of success are? With the resources and connections we have now, there's a chance of success, but the ancestor hasn't given the order. His theory of nibbling is already unrealistic. Chapter 5171. Right now, the heavenly fate has been exposed, and several underground bases have been destroyed. If we continue to develop according to his method of encroachment, we will be defeated one by one sooner or later. Omega Kotoku young master stabbed the camphor tree in front of him, leaving a deep sword mark on the tree. Second young master wants to. Ling stood behind him with a frown on his face. Acting on his own? Heh. Omega Kotoku young master sneered, and put away the sword in his hand. He turned to look at Ling and said indifferently, Ancestor is old in the end. Many of his decisions are no longer suitable due to the changes in the times. He raised his head and covered his eyes with one hand. He squinted his eyes and looked at the dim starry night sky. Just like many things, if you don't fight for them and fight for them, you won't be able to get them even if they're placed in front of you. The pill hall's mutated pill is rumored to be in the final stage of development. Omega Kotoku young master's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. Go and get one. Young master. That person inherited the power of the ancient Emolien. If we don't rely on external help, how can we defeat him? Ling hurriedly bowed and said, Please reconsider. This mutated pill was no joke. Once consumed, the young master might not have a high chance, but there was a 1 in 10,000 chance that he would turn into a corpse puppet. Of course, with the young master's talent, he didn't believe that would happen. At most, the young master would awaken a special ability. Look at little 5, isn't he doing well now? Omega Kotoku young master smiled faintly. Say, since we're close to him, why don't we try it first? Ixien. Ling called out helplessly. Qin Xien raised his hand to stop him from continuing, and turned to walk out of the garden. Tomorrow at this time, I want to see a level 5 mutated pill. Ling was silent for a moment. In the end, he didn't call out to him and watched him leave. The next evening, Eastern Palace. Your Highness, you're finally back. When Kai Xiao saw the Crown Prince step through the door, she hurriedly went up to greet him. She hurriedly said in a small voice, This afternoon, after the Crown Princess received a message from a mechanical bird, she has been sulking until now. Emolien secretly scolded her father in her heart. She had dragged him to the imperial study to discuss this, and that endlessly. Look, his wife was angry. Hence, he hastily ran inside, lifted the bead bracelet, and entered the inner hall. Sure enough, he saw the little stoic sitting on the bed with a fuming expression. She had pulled out a pillow and was pounding it with all her might. Emolien's heart shuddered nervously for no reason. Could it be that the person his wife was hammering was his true self? He didn't feel that he had offended his wife today. This morning, he only took advantage of the fact that his wife was sleeping soundly and secretly kissed her twice. He shouldn't have been discovered, so why was he beaten by his wife? When Arbor looked up, he saw Jojo's Lotus hesitating as she leaned against the shelf of treasures next to the door. She dawdled and didn't come forward, and her 2 black, beady eyes were looking at him with an aggrieved expression. You're back, the little fellow called out weakly. Wife! Emolien hastily ran over and scooped her into his arms. He had an expression of admitting his mistake. Hit me, don't hit the pillow. This husband came back late today. Hit me hard. This husband will definitely come back on time tomorrow. Arbor glanced at him speechlessly. Chapter 5172. This guy's serious expression, as if he was asking to be hammered, was both amusing and infuriating. Arbor looked down at the pillow on his lap. You think it's you? What did this guy do to have such a guilty conscience? Did he think Jojo was hammering a lotus as soon as he stepped in? Could it be that he had really done something wrong? What did you do today? I didn't do anything. Emo Lien quickly looked at his wife magnanimously and reached out to grab her small hand, rubbing it against his chest. Jojo, feel it if you don't believe me. Hubby's heart is beating passionately for you. I don't dare to deceive you in the slightest. Arbor's mouth twitched, and he expressionlessly pulled back his hand and pounded the pillow. Did you know? That person ran away. Who ran away? Wuxia. Huang He used a mechanical bird to send me a message today, saying that she was rescued by someone. Snow Island has also been turned into a mess by someone. It looks like I've reached the end of my days as the island master. Emo Lien. His wife was angry at him for reaching the end of his days as the island master. But it turned out she wasn't angry at him for returning late. Who saved Wuxia? Does Huang He know? Huang He sent a message saying that those people didn't act like normal people. They all seemed to be speed superhumans. They didn't directly clash with the island's army. Instead, they used a surprise attack to directly rescue her, and then retreated. The little stoic fumed. Although our people killed several speed superhumans, we didn't have time to conduct a large-scale search. This group of people came quickly and retreated even faster. They left after rescuing her. Didn't you already order Huang He to get rid of this woman? Emo Lien couldn't help but be stunned when he recalled this matter. Huang He said there was some progress on the antidote. I originally wanted to try it out on Wuxia again, but who knew? Arbor clenched his fists. But with her broken body, she probably won't live for long even if she's rescued. I just don't understand what Tianyun is after. As far as I know, Tianyun will never save a useless person. So this Wuxia should be useful in some way? But Huang He also said that Wuxia's body is strange. Several of the corpse puppets that had been used to test the medicine had already died. Wuxia, on the other hand, has tried several kinds of antidotes and taken no less than 100 kinds of medicines, but she's still alive. That means Wuxia isn't just a mutant with a special ability. Emo Lien took over Arbor's words and continued to analyze. Or perhaps, this Wuxia has taken some high-level mutated pills from Tianyun? Could her body be reinventing itself in ways we don't know about? Arbor was shocked. He sat up straight and carefully considered Emo Lien's words. He nodded solemnly. So she might not die immediately. As long as this body doesn't collapse, maybe it can make a comeback? This is only one of our inferences, so it might not be completely correct. Emo Lien held her hand comfortingly. After all, if Tianyun can really produce this kind of medicine that can continuously refine the human body by force, it can create even more monsters that can't be killed. It's impossible for it to continue lying dormant. At this point, the two looked at each other and suddenly said, "We have to have Huang He and the others come back as soon as possible." Chapter 5173. I've already notified him. Arbor clenched her fists. She wasn't sure what this heavenly fate wanted to do next. What effect would kidnapping Wuxia have on the big picture? Or was it that Wuxia actually had a secret they didn't know about? For example, perhaps her body could be modified again? Arbor shook her head. There was no point in thinking too much now. She should summon Huang He and the others back as soon as possible. How's Mr. Su's research going at the small base in Beiwang Valley? Arbor thought of this and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Why don't we invite Mr. Su and the others back as well? We can discuss it with Huang He and the others, and see if the two sides can piece together useful information to make progress in research." Emo Lien nodded solemnly. I was also thinking the same thing. I'll have someone inform Mr. Su and the others to set off immediately and join us here. When the time comes, let Mr. Su and Huang He discuss what to do next. Arbor nodded. We can have the people who killed the heavenly fate come back in batches. Arrange for them to be gathered at Duan Yu's place first. We'll see when the time comes. Previously, the heavenly fate's people attacked Sangzhou, so they didn't know what they would do next. Arbor hoped that they could deal with the heavenly fate again while ensuring everyone's safety. There shouldn't be much time left for them to use. The heavenly fate's recent actions all indicated that they might not be far from a large-scale outbreak. Have every city prepare for security, Arbor said expressionlessly. Pay special attention to protecting the water sources. Okay. The people of the city defense team have to patrol 24 hours a day without stopping. This is especially true for those who are transmitting messages and setting up defenses on the drum towers. Every defense point has to be under constant surveillance every minute. Prince Emo nodded repeatedly. Have His Majesty give the order to cancel all unnecessary gatherings. Arbor said coldly. Have those orioles and swallows stay at home peacefully, and don't cause trouble in front of me. If they have nothing to do, gather them and go dig a moat or build a wall or something. She was not a good-natured person. If she was provoked, she would not give face to anyone. If he told you to dig a canal, you had to dig it. If he told you to build a wall, you had to build it. Don't even talk about a delicate young lady. Even if the Heavenly King himself came, you had to build it when Jojo told you to. All right, my wife. I will explain everything to our father. Prince Emo smiled and nodded. He thought to himself, my wife is really awesome. She's so comprehensive in everything she considers. In this way, the workers digging the canals and building the defensive walls would definitely not run out. The rear could be replenished at any time. The next day, a protective notice was posted in the central square. The defense level of Dragon Flame City had been raised to the highest level. Entering and exiting the city gates had to be checked, and the transmission of messages had also begun to become tense. More people were assigned to guard the water source area of the entire city. A smokeless war had been quietly arranged without anyone knowing about it. On the other side, Huang He gathered a group of alchemists on the snowy island and led them to board a large ship. He turned his head and glanced at the island they had stayed on for many days. If there were no accidents, their return to Dragon Flame City, this time would be the day when the battle with the Heavenly Fate Empire was imminent. Chapter 5174. If I don't live, you will die. Life and death were not in anyone's hands. Fairy, we have already followed your orders and removed all the resources on the island. Do you want to burn it? Burn it. Fairy Yellow Crane silently glanced at the snowy island, her gaze landing on a wooden plaque in front of the island. Countless lines of fire flew with the wind and landed on the snowy island, instantly igniting the entire island. Set off. Fairy Yellow Crane raised her hand and shouted. The large ship set sail and sailed into the Forgotten River 3 months later. The entire Qiao residence was filled with jubilation. All the servants were busy inside and outside for the Little Tiger's 100th day banquet. Arbor returned to the Qiao residence with Prince Emo yesterday, planning to stay at home for a while. Recently, her stomach was growing rapidly, and her pregnancy was becoming more obvious. Mother saw that her stomach was so big and nervously followed her around all day, worried that she would bump into something. However, she didn't have any problems. She could still walk as if she was flying, jump up and down, jump over walls, and flip tiles without any problems. She was the clearest about her own body. She checked her pulse 3 times a day, and every time, she was very healthy and normal. The key was that there was still no reaction, and she could eat and sleep. Counting the days, she reckoned that she would be able to meet baby Emo in another 3 months. Thinking of this, she felt happy for no reason. Recently, her husband was so busy that he couldn't even see the sky and earth. Day and night, he was busy dealing with the information gathered from all over the world. Many small fortifications were constantly harassed by the small forces of the Heavenly Fate Empire. Like probing, like provocation, there weren't any obvious movements, but they were always like rats in the gutter. From time to time, they would crawl out and make a bunch of noises. It was very annoying. In addition, a medium-sized matter also happened in the 3 continents recently. There was an organization called Bright Light that was rapidly rising in various large cities in the 3 continents. Especially in the capital cities of the 3 continents, They had established quite a reputation and won over the faith of many people. It was said that this organization specialized in teaching the general public how to deal with the heavenly fate empire. The entire organization worshipped an omnipotent holy maiden. Why not? Hearing the two words holy maiden, Arbor felt like she had eaten a fly. Holy maiden or holy maiden. None of them seemed to be good people. She once again thought of the saintess of the Sun Moon Temple, Nie Yaoguang. She had escaped so quickly. Ever since Du Chunjiang left, it was as if she had disappeared from the face of the earth. She had not been seen again. Now that he thought about it, he missed it quite a bit. Arbor thought to himself as the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold arc. Bright light? Using light to illuminate the entire earth? Crown Princess, Crown Princess, Crown Princess. Kai Xiu excitedly rushed in from outside and said with a happy face, Young Master Duanmu, young Miss Qi, and the others have returned. Arbor stood up and walked out quickly. Duanmu Qing and the others had come out of seclusion a few days ago. They had all gone to the western outskirts Eastern Peak Mountain to undergo the heavenly punishment. After Duanmu Qing consumed the holy fruit, he had been absorbing the power of the holy fruit drop by drop. He had been in seclusion in the star field for so long, and he had broken through to the 8th level of God Master. His talent was indeed shocking. As for Qi Xianxian and the others, they had all stepped onto the steps of God Realm experts and rushed to the East Peak Mountain to experience the 5 spirits reincarnation. These few days, the Dou family head, who lived near the East Peak Mountain, was scared out of his wits. The 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation seemed to be free. It was as if it was crazy and kept descending on the East Peak Mountain. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.